Okay, I think we're all set. All right, how do I sound? Do I sound good to you guys? Am I good? Am I in the safe zone? All right, let me turn this down a little bit on my side. There we go. Perfect. Perfect, perfect, perfect. Phew! Howdy, Xavier. Good to see you in the chat. Whew! It's been a crazy, wild weekend for me. So unfortunately, I had to skip a few streams, but I'm back. I'm back. Hopefully, I'll back. I'm not gonna have any more, you know, complications this week. So that'd be nice. In the meantime, we get to finally get through our game session. Now, I'm gonna say this up front. With full transparency. Wait, how many do I? Okay, it's 16, so I want. Okay. Actually, no. Who knows? I could always get on my first temple. It's possible. Anyway, I'm gonna say this outright. If I lose the 50-50 here, I'm skipping Saridra until she probably reruns, because I do really like her, but I'm not. I don't have enough gameplay uses for her. Like, I'll probably try to go for a Naxa if he's rerunning next patch. And if I get him, then yeah, I'll go for her on her rerun. But like for now, there's not a big enough incentive for me to go crazy if I lose the 50-50 over her. So I'm gonna try to save, because I would love to get, you know, Evernight when she's because she's gonna be either phase 1 or phase 2 next patch, right? And I would also love to get Constance when she comes out, but I'm gonna be skipping the Cyrene patch, and I don't know what reruns are gonna happen in the middle there, so like there's a lot I have to kind of like, you know, pace myself for. So we shall see how this turns out. We shall see. In the meantime, yeah, let's just let's get. Oh, I should also show, because this did in fact happen to me. There we go. So I went to I decided, you know what, I got a temple, I might get the 5-star here. Let's see what we get. Well, I did in fact get the 5-star on the standard banner. So I was like, okay, who's the 5-star I'm gonna get? Let us see it. Because again, I would love to get closer to E6 Clara. I ended up getting Bronya's Light Cone. I was like, oh, I have a second one of these, which might be good, honestly. I'm not gonna hate that, though again, I'd still have preferred a character. But you know, I'm not gonna say no to probably one of the better Light Cones I could have gotten from this banner, so. Not the worst thing in the world. Anyway, now let's see what about the actual. Nope. Now we know how this goes. Ooh, all right. Let us. All right. There we go. Just a little bit here, so I can have the temple. I'm pretty sure I was like 28 into pity before we started this, so 48 should be about now. Again, early winning the 50-50 would be ideal. Yeah, not even a character. All right. Yeah, okay. Just do it. Woo. Nope. Nope. All right, come on. Come on. Nope. All right, so that's like, what, 68 something? All right, so this will put me back down to about the 150 mark. Oh, we got it. We got it. All right, let's see. That was about 70-ish. Maybe a little less. Ooh. Post-op, don't really care. Come on. Oh my god, you're making me really wait till the very end. Oh, we got Clara. All right, we lost the 50-50. Okay. There we go. That's E4 Clara. Nice. Finally. For a second, I thought I got my E1 blade, but no, it'll be E4 Clara.
Things will get better, won't they?
We're so close. Gosh. We're so close to E6 Clara now. We're there. We're almost there. My lord, you too big. Hey, Mercy, how you doing? Let's see. God. I don't know how much longer before I can get E6 Clara, but I'm gonna look forward to it when I finally do. You know what? Just for just for the hell of it, let's we're gonna get him. Nope. Yeah, predictable. Also, getting Arlen when he's not even on the rate up, like what? So let's see. I have almost 60 pulls here. You know what? I want to do one more just so I can say I have 60 pulls. But let's see. I have about 60 pulls here. A little less than 150 here. Like I said, I'm gonna just do it here for the hell. There we go. Yay! All right, so about like 20 into pity. I have about a little under 150 pulls here, so like maybe like 115-ish, right? We'll see, but I can probably get back to 150 before the end of the patch. So we got another like 3 weeks, so that's fine. That'll be easy enough. And then I guess the question would be, do I get how easy or difficult will it be if I wanted to get both Anaxa and Evernight? Ooh, that's gonna be the tricky one. Now, granted, I have 60 here. So having 60 spare pulls, it'll be more the more I keep pulling. That's pretty good. So, like, I'm already, like, this is almost 200 pulls as is. So, I mean, it's not the worst situation in the world, and I have my guarantee, so I can't say that I hate the situation I'm in. Because I get the guarantee on March, then I go for Anaxa, I'll be skipping Cyrene, right? Once Evernight and Anaxa are secure, then I just have to save for Constance. And I guess the question would be, is anyone else going to get rerun with potentially Anaxa and stuff? Because, like I said, I would love to get Mighty, but I don't think that's ever going to happen at this point. I'd love to get Rappa. Maybe that'll happen. Maybe they'll rerun her with Constance. That would be kind of crazy. I don't know if I'll be able to get both of them. And then we'll have the new patch, of course, happening right afterward. But I'll be honest, from what I hear, it's going to give us a new version of Sparkle, and I have zero interest in the design they're going for with her. But we'll see, we'll see, we'll see. Anyway, that'll be it for this now. Let me get this all closed up. There we go. Turning you off. We're going to try is the word, to get Dark Souls 1 working on here. I don't know how possible this is going to be, if I'm being real. So let me just try to get like my TV setup done quickly. Okay, yeah, okay, we got this. This is fine. Now, next on the agenda would be, can I get, there we go, Prepare to Die edition? Because as much as I love this game, I do not play it that often, especially with the book and everything, and the lore play and everything. But now we can at least try just kind of play it. Oh god. 1 second. Yeah, okay. Let's see if I can make this work. How's the audio sound on your side, by the way? Just gotta double check that too. Oh god, we'll be here forever. Loki hates DS1. Lol. There it is. Buy my book. I got to 110 on that character? That's actually wild. Like, legit? That's kinda crazy. Also, what the hell am I doing here? I don't even remember. I don't remember what I got here. Anyway, In the meantime, okay, sure. Sounds fine so far. Good. If it sounds too quiet or something, just tell me. No, we can close you. You're, you don't need to be open. You're just a distraction. Okay. Let's also... No, I don't need you open either. Go away. Let's see. Can we also have it where I can listen in the background to the latest draft we have on this? We're gonna put the speed down.
Hidden landscape.
There we go. Okay. Let's see how this goes. Oh wow, Return of the King. Hey, Nobre.
Landscape.
We'll see how,
it goes without
how much
saying
of a
that the
king
painted
I
world
am
of
here.
Ariandel is connected to the painted world of Ariamis from DS1.
There we go.
Aside from both being snowy painting worlds, the tower which housed the half-dragon facility in Ariamis is buried at the very bottom of Ariandel.
We're back in business.
The Corvians residing in Ariandel are likewise the same crowmen encountered in the previous games. Despite the lack of wings in their new design, Corvian knights even perform the same pecking grab attack. And just as how Ariamis was the name of the original painter, Ariandel is the name of the painting's restorer. That such a grand art piece had begun to decay in the interim since DS1 isn't surprising. Neither is it unexpected for someone to restore it, painting over the old, damaged parts with something new. This would explain why Priscilla's tower is the only part of the old Ariamis temple we can spy, half buried in the depths of the new painting as it is. Everything else has received a complete makeover in a literal sense. Now, that small temple on an isolated mountain is an entire mountain valley covered in cliffs and trees. Even so, the essence of the painting world remains the same. Giant crabs burrow out of the frozen river at the valley bottom. Their size is indicative of their long lives compared to the average small crab, meaning that they have called this river home for potentially just as long. And unlike the giant crabs seen in the outside world, these ice crabs carry crystal gems. Such precious stones are the products of titanite interacting with something in its environment, hence they can be used to similarly alter the nature of weapons. In the case of the crystal gem, it has magic damage that scales with intelligence, which is fitting in light of crystallization's historic association with sorcery. But in this circumstance, the gem apparently formed in the icy river the crab digs through. Indeed, ice resulting from cold weather is typically crystalline, with rock wall assets along the river retextured to look like ice crystals. Add all the snow piling on top, and the frozen water's power might be dense enough to crystallize titanite buried with it. And the nature of that power is revealing. This ice is, at its core, magic. No matter its shape, the painting world is still a transdimensional space using oils on
I just wish the interface and stuff was better. I wonder if there's a mod that'll fix up Dark Souls 1 so it doesn't feel so shit on PC. Because God, I hate it where if I do anything to tab out, it tabs out the whole game.
Put another way,
like, I just want to enjoy my game on full screen. Is that so hard?
Only with its presence anchored in a physical medium at the root. As to the magic imbued into that physical paint, DS1 implied Ariamis to be a medial of Einar Londo employing his kind's power of sunlight. The light of the first flame, of course, holds dominion over time and thus space, whereas fire has shown the potential to generate various forms of matter as exhibited by pyromancy. Ariandel reinforces these implications with its native wildlife. The white tree women dotting the forests are peculiar, not least because some emit fire from the tips of their branches. In fact, they all have the ability to produce these small flames and rain them down on foes. It isn't as if they're immune to flame either. They have a worse reaction to being burnt than any enemy we encounter, human or plant. If fire can still cause them such pain, then the fire they do produce must be quite precisely controlled, which would explain why their rain of fire has such a slow velocity. More than likely, the branch tips release excess heat used to stay warm. Their grab attack proves that they breathe in quite a bit of cold. And where would their bodies be drawing out this firepower except the land where they have taken root? Concept art reaffirms this proposition.
DS1 Remaster has an issue. Yes, but DS1 Remaster has the issue of being DS1 Remaster.
Their power of fire is absorbed.
I'm sorry to say, I do not like the texture changes.
And we see this manifest in other aspects of their physiology.
Look, you got the Caganite disease? I don't know what you're talking about. I'm clean, I promise you. Could I do the... No. I don't think I could do it, even if I want to. I don't think I have the fire resistance with currently. If I got some of my pyromancy stuff, maybe. Maybe, but as is, I don't think I can do it. Also, oh, 1 second. Is there a reason why you're struggling? Like, hello? Hello? You okay? I think my word had a seizure. Let's try again.
The Crow Village Library grounds, a group of white tree women surround a corpse carrying a young white branch. This item's text suggests a connection to the white trees used for Olisilian sorcery staves, hence its mimicry effect akin to Wallasile's chameleon spell. But while we do find this branch beneath trees matching that description throughout the game, none of them exist in Ariandel, nor do we find hide or hair of Oisilians present.
Alright,
in
we
short,
gotta go.
The odd branch stands out
We
as
gotta go
likely a piece
back.
off
I
another
got
white bark
the
tree,
infection
the
in
white
my
tree
head.
women surrounding its holder. If the young branch does belong to them, then their unexpected gang up on this passerby is understandable. Visitors to the library could normally trust at least these trees to stand as mere background scenery, but this is essentially one of their children, to be protected at all costs. And if that child came from them, then it implies that they too can manifest the same powers as Olisilian light sorcery derived from Inner Londo's sunlight magic. It would explain the similar white bark. All of this is reaffirmed by one particular tree woman. She cries all by her lonesome in front of a corpse at the waterfall end of the Valley River. The reason for the cadaver becomes obvious upon approach when she goes berserk, wildly flailing to the point of crawling after us. Cut dialogue confirms plans for a crying mother to assume us responsible for her missing child. While the mother refers to her child as he in English,
Yeah, I know.
the Japanese script only uses the
I'm sure the
gender-neutral
technical
he
term may not
until
be
her death
accurate, but that's
throes,
why I'm
where
seeing
she
the same
instead uses
texture
the
still,
feminine.
no, Bray.
This makes sense.
I don't know
as the
how
tree
else to
woman's child would
describe
presumably
the
be
look
another
of the
tree woman.
lava.
But whether or not the loss of a
Or
child
stuff like
motivates
that.
her tears in the final product, her death is nonetheless revealing. Once the enemy is killed, a ladder out of the valley will fade in with a supernatural sound, indicating that she had cast some sort of magic to hide it from our sight and thereby use. Wouldn't want the child or kidnapper to escape, after all. In other words, she cast an illusion or invisibility spell typically associated with Olisilian sorcery. The meaning is clear. The tree women have evolved to channel the magic power of their habitat, the light of fire which imbued Ariami's paints as he committed them to his vast canvas. But just like fire, oil paints eventually degrade, and the painting needed restoration. That entropy is reflected in the painting world, though it isn't one-to-one. Gale presents us just a scrap of the once grand canvas, but it is able to draw us into the complete dimension nonetheless. Rather, the painting's rot foretells the world's consumption by fire. The dimension was created with fire, stabilized
You don't
through
realize
its
how
medium.
big some of these
When that
eggs
medium is
are.
reduced to nothing, either naturally or
then you
because the
compare
magic
them
power
to what
burns
you
through
see in
it. What is left
DS3.
for that magic to feed on? The fire fuels itself.
I
with itself.
forgot how big
Much
these
like the
things
first
look.
flame, the power of the flame unleashed becomes its own kindling, which will inevitably burn up the entire space it formed. To prevent that, new medium was added as substitute, resulting in the brand new world of Ariandel. A new coat of blood.
It's in Loki's head. Word? You okay? You all right there?
The transition from
There we
Ariamis to
go.
Ariandel was neither quick nor painless.
There we go.
Dark Souls 2 DS2 confirmed that the Great Painting was among the elements of Lord and brought over to Drangliac thanks to the Drift. This was something the residents could not ignore, even sequestered in their dimension. DS1 had already presented them as prisoners who survived their wardens, leaving them truly liberated for the first time since being brought to this world.
Well-
Now their painting was also stranded in another part of the globe, isolated from any gods. Even
Well-
the Guardians keeping the inhabitants in and non-inhabitants out would need to reevaluate their role. What was the path forward in this brave new world? For some, it was to reintegration. DS2 established that at least some Corvians, as well as individuals like Jeremiah, entered the outside land, where they either died or sired new generations who inevitably lost track of
It's
their
okay.
own history. But not everyone followed suit, evidently. Based on the Crow Village, some of the prisoners chose to rebuild their community
It's okay.
within the confines of the painting. This divide between those unafraid of the outside world and those wishing to remain inside is understandable. Ariamis had become a place to belong for those without one, driven out of mainstream society for one reason or another. Even if this new world was friendlier to their kind than the old one,
Honestly, I
there
would
was
love
no
if
guarantee that the
Nobra, if
changes
they
that
just
would
had a mod that
eventually manifest
reverted
the same
everything
prejudices
about the
as DS2
the
revealed.
remaster
That's
to
exactly
the
what
OG
happened.
game.
There was definitely a case
in
for
the
staying hunkered down
specifics,
within the
and you
painting.
just got to
At the
keep
same time, they
all
couldn't just hide away
the-
behind the canvas forever.
all the
Their
quality
cold
of
but
life
fiery
stuff
world would one
to
day burn
the
up, forcing them to find a new home
actually
eventually.
using it.
Why
Then I
not
would
start now?
gladly be like,
This
okay,
question could be
I'll
put off
shell some
initially,
money to
but not
upgrade.
indefinitely when the art piece was gradually succumbing to age. But before the Remainers need make their decision, Ariandel came in to buy them more time. The bulbous man was nowhere near the same caliber of artist as Ariamis. Instead of magical paints,
Bulbous is
he used
fair,
his blood
right?
for the restoration.
I think it's better
Recall
than
that
saying
blood is the
corpulent,
medium of the soul
which I did
and can
mention,
possess
I
a
think,
similar
like 1 or
viscosity
2
as oil.
times.
This makes it a viable, if crude, substitute for feeding the flame undergirding the painting world. Ariandel did take some creative liberties with his restoration, reshaping the landscape, but his blood nonetheless gave the painting a new lease on life. Having the painting renamed after himself was no doubt justified. But then, who was Ariandel to step in during its world's hour of need? Most likely, another inhabitant who is already present and so aware of the art piece's true nature. He is a Corvian, and blood painting for magical ends is consistent with DS1's blush shield found in Ariamis. Ariandel might be that legendary shield's creator, locked away in the painting along with it to be forgotten for the ominous use of people's blood. But even if only a student of the actual creator, this rather large Corvian assuredly had the expertise to bridge the gap with the Ariamis the painter. Existing within the painting since before the events of DS1 also explains Ariandel's motive. He loved his new home and would do anything to preserve it. If that meant brushing up on an old taboo like blood magic, so be it. The Corvian just didn't want to let go of their place to belong. Such devotion is made apparent in his present-day vocation as pastor of the New Crow Village. The denizens all refer to Ariandel as father in the same sense as the church fathers in Christianity, and the rose of Ariandel derived from his soul doubles as a miracle catalyst. After restoring the painting, the hero to its residents became their spiritual leader, which likely doubled to serve as the village head. The local parish sits in a fancy fenced enclosure at the back of the settlement on the highest elevation, betraying its paramount importance for the settlers. This is all to be expected, given that religious fervor is central to the very nature of a Corvian. Recall in DS1 that Corvians were specifically the Crow men of Velka, twisted into their avian forms by their profound reverence for her. The goddess of sin oversaw their world as prisoners and continues to inspire their faith. One resident of Ariandel, Gale, prays to a goddess whom he calls a mother of the forlorn, or undesirables, with no place to belong, the same terms used to describe the half-dragon Priscilla in DS1. Indeed, the same statue of Velka with her abominable child erected in Ariamis is enshrined in a chapel in Ariandel, though it has since been defaced. Meanwhile, the village church's idol is strangely absent from its shrine, though books otherwise cover every element of the pulpit. Ariandel preached not with scripture but treatises, presumably borrowed from the neighboring
if there is a
library.
mod for that,
And
then you
this
know what,
archive,
I'll actually
receiving the
look
finest
into that.
furnishings, does enshrine similarly defaced statues. This Ashes of Ariandel DLC
Because
model
then once you get through like the technical issues of actually playing it, it's like, oh yeah, I would love to play this more often.
The rusted coin reinforces this impression. This item from Drangliac seems to have been adopted as the regional currency, hence receiving a handful of gold variants as one burial gift. But more importantly, the coins still depict the angel identified with Velka in DS2. In fact, many of the corpses carrying this coinage appear to have been placed by the developers with this in mind. The first is found before the dilapidated bridge in the Undead Settlement, which leads directly to a statue of Velka. One more lies after our first clear look at a statue in the Cathedral of the Deep, the same goddess statue Gale prays to in the cleansing chapel nearby. Yet another sits in Farron Keep next to a relief of the Four Kings, whose country the god patronized. For the DLC, the first lies in the middle of the snowfield, the cold painted world which the goddess also presided over. Another lies in the middle of her worshippers' village, gold coins fittingly enough. And the last sits outside the library where those statues of Velka stand. Judging by the pattern, these locations are a playful nod by the developers to the angel's subtle connection.
What's wrong with the facts?
There are a lack of
worse
miracles
than the
related
OG.
to the goddess inside the painting.
That's really
Certain Corvians in the village do perform simplified versions of Soul Arrow and homing Soul Mass with meager twigs, doubtless self-taught using
In
the library's
general, I consider the remaster to be the biggest disappointment that's probably ever happened in From Software's release history.
Perished, leaving none to carry that torch in Ariandel.
On a
And while
personal
Velka and her
level.
followers aren't allergic to miracles and faith-based magic, her sphere emphasizes knowledge and so lends itself to arts, which require intelligence to cast. We already saw this with the sorcerers in New Londo Religion, so it isn't surprising to see the same pattern develop among an eclectic group united only by dedication to the witch goddess. Without Pardonus to guide them, the painting's inhabitants have created their own traditions, following in Velka's footsteps if not her miraculous tales. In that case, there is no reason to question that the figure venerated in Ariandel is the goddess of sin. Just as she was a loving mother to Priscilla, Velka has become a mother to all those detested and driven out of mainstream society. Even if their devotion doesn't rise to the level of Corvian transformation, they have her protection in the painting and so have continued to pay her respects.
I actually wonder if there would be a mod project that would try to do a
whether or not the goddess
their
actually gave him
own
the blessing, he
remaster of the
established
game
teachings of
from
the
like,
Swiss
I don't know,
faith
I won't say
around
the
Velka
ground
as creature
up,
of a
but you
new
know,
church.
like
And if he
more
well predates the
radical than
painting's
we
displacement
actually
to the New
got.
World, then his devotion to the goddess had also been long-standing, if only because the bulbous Corvians so appreciated their place to belong. How that translated to policy was probably preserving the current order. We do find a miracle of the Orthodox god Lloyd in his church. With such a
Of
small and
course.
insulated country, maintaining it had likely
should've
driven
known.
every one of Ariandel's decisions, and this includes their relations with outsiders. Come this way.
All right. So we have to go all the way back up here.
Even after the drift, entering the painting is as easy as coming too
Yeah,
close
I
to the
know I
canvas,
am. It's not
even
that
just
From
the
Soft
scratch,
themselves
as
made it,
Dale
you know, but they
demonstrates
licensed
to
it
us.
out to
With
whoever
how many
did
have
end
entered
up
the painting
doing
since
it,
the
right?
events of
So, or
DS1,
Namco
the
Bandai
peculiar
at
doll
least
required
did,
to enter that
so.
game appears to have been more a prerequisite for the narrative than a literal key. Regardless,
You
these
never
many
really
new
seen a
inhabitants
side by
range from
side.
people to animals. For the latter, we see
I'm not
ordinary
surprised
creatures
by
suited
that.
to a snowy environment like the ice crabs and wolves. There are also sewer centipedes in the village's open
There's not
drainage
really
canal.
much to
Their
show
toxic
side by
spew
side outside a
demonstrating the
few
creature's
effects, so
capacity
I
to
don't think
filter
it's something
through
that would
the
get
sewage
very
nutrients.
popular with
All this
people.
fauna exists outside the painting as well, so these other world denizens may have ended up drawn in by accident and simply adapted. The only one even
There
slightly
is actually
unusual
From
is the
Software's Dark
centipede,
Souls
which resembles a drowned
remastered.
woman while
Ooh,
digging
gonna
into
have to
pee
look
with
into
its body
that
long
too.
mouth in shallow water. But in the end, they're hardly outcasts.
That sounds
Plant
cool,
life
no,
isn't
Bray.
excluded
Then
from this
if all
scenario
that
either.
works out, I
The
might
budding
be
green
able to
blossom
try
is a
out
variant of the green blossoms harvested from Lordran in DS1.
your
While still
retranslation
growing in
mod,
waterfronts,
then.
the new breed sprouts
And we can
white
kinda
flowers
see
in
how
chilly
it,
water.
how
Likewise,
it pans
the Rhine
out.
Blue Moss Clump is a variant of the other moss balls first seen in the Old World,
All right.
having evolved to retain heat despite the cold. Both plants evolved specifically to thrive in an environment strained for warmth and energy. The description for moss ball fruit indicates that this potential has always existed within at least the highly adaptive moss. But regardless, these are plainly products of a natural evolution, hence their presence in Ariandel and beyond. Moreover, none of these are traits to earn them scorn. Flora or fauna, these things all still have a place to belong in the world outside. The same cannot necessarily be said for the other newcomers. Although since adapting to Ariandel, the White Tree women probably weren't always native. Flora resembling bipedal fauna to varying degrees is nothing new, but the tree women differ in a few key ways. One is the fact that they breathe. Cut dialogue indicates that they can even talk, an ability otherwise only seen with the mushroom men in DS1.
Women?
But unlike the
Talking?
fungi, the tree women have a visible
A
mouth from which
miraculous
they eject air.
discovery.
Even stranger, we can loot alluring skulls from their bodies, implying that these human-looking craniums filled with souls belong to them. Put simply, a solid bark plant has an animal skeleton, at least for the upper half. Was their progenitor a woman who became more like a tree, or a tree who became more like a woman? Whatever the case, this bizarre evolution is unprecedented. The tree women don't comfortably fit in with either people or plants, and so would be driven out from both camps. Indeed, their sobbing members cut dialogue
Where is
affirms that her
member?
child would have
There we
nowhere
go.
to belong in the cold, outside.
We need
Their
this
only
more
home is the
importantly.
painting. Then there is, of course, the undead. Aside from the various hollows wandering the wilderness, the village is home to slave knights like Gale and another found dead on the premises. We also find signs of pyromancers, dark wraiths, and more within the painting. Their exact reasons may differ, but all of these bearers of the dark sign were ultimately driven from their homelands and could find refuge in this place. As one Corvian puts it, this world is the haven, literally resting place, sought by the undesirable. Now that we have arrived, he encourages us to find a bed to rest upon. Those shunned outcasts simply want reprieve from the
I forget
harsh
it.
phases of
Is there any
society,
other
which
twin
Ariandel
lizard
provides.
guys like
And
this,
as the
or is that
Corvian
the only
acknowledges,
one?
This is the same for everyone there,
This,
undead
that's
or
gonna
no.
be annoying to
Together,
farm.
they can form a cold country of castaways far and away from the prejudices of those normal people. But accepting just any visitor with open arms would just be begging for trouble. Who is to guarantee that the person is friendly or even an undesirable? At best, the person might be some ignorant sap who unintentionally strayed into the painting, such as the case with the chosen undead in DS1. At worst, the person might have come to intentionally do harm to the inhabitants. Again, not unprecedented. For that reason, the Corvian village needed some form of buffer to protect themselves and filter out the bad apples.
Let's head
the side
this
of the village,
way.
not given natural protection from the steep cliffs, does maintain a fortified wall, but that would be the last resort. Despite the changes to the painting between games, our starting point remains the same, on the outskirts of the explorable world. The aforementioned Corvian already sits in the cave we
Yeah, I
start
don't
in,
see it.
evidently a newcomer from his dialogue. Many of the corpses in the preceding snowfield leading up and into the village likewise harbor the souls of travelers. So, if they wanted to stop these migrants, they best set up shop closer to the border. Out in the snowfields, we can come across the remains of a stone settlement.
Nope,
Well
same.
fortified, if the large watchtower still standing is any indication.
What do I have
The
this
ruins are now
gold
the dwelling of
serpent
the Norwood
ring
Knights,
for?
But why would
Clearly
the village
not
allow them,
helping.
or any party, settle the land beside themselves? More likely,
Wait, what?
this settlement in the wilderness was established by the village, creating an outpost to quickly intercept
Oh,
and
right, it
process
removes
visitors.
my helmet 'cause
Not
it puts
everyone
on
would
this one,
necessarily
of
be an
course.
unexpected guest, however. Wilhelm questions how we have strayed into the painting when no bell tolls, implying that some were guided inside by a bell within. We do see the watchtower overlook the chapel sitting across the valley. Its tower designed to house a large bell. Said bell is found half buried in the woods between the chapel and the village. The outpost would thus have received a clear signal for when to expect visitors. Once it confirmed the proper migrants and their sincerity, they would be allowed to assimilate.
Yay! Assimilation! Now, why is it so hard for you to go to the next paragraph? Have we ever had this issue before? I don't think so. I feel like this is weird. Weirdly unique. Oh, I thought there was like a glowing, like, soul thing inside the tree for a second there. Eventually, you're gonna drop the stupid chestnut. Stupid poison moss-covered tree. Seen the guy's mob before. I think he actually makes it look worse with how he does it personally. So, I mean, I'm gonna evaluate it for myself, obviously, but like, ideally, I just want it where it's like, okay, I get the remaster, I get all the nice technical things for under the hood and stuff, so it doesn't have any weird problems on my end when it comes to playing it on stream. But it looks exactly like the OG game. Like, legit, I would even be happy if someone literally was just like, okay, I literally just, like, replaced all the game file stuff outside of the technical thing in the menus with the OG games file, so it's 100% the original. Woo! Yeah! Woo! Killed a parasite! All's right in the world. There we are. Oh, you don't think your model will be compatible? Well, that would suck. It's gonna be weird to me if we actually are getting a Dark Souls 3 remastered, by the way. I get why they would do it, because Dark Souls 3 Remaster is like the most popular of all the Dark Souls games. Or Dark Souls 3, I should say. No, it obviously doesn't have a remaster yet. So I wouldn't be surprised if they did that. I would just kind of feel like, why? Why would you do that to yourself? You have Dark Souls 1 that you could give a full-on remake, Blue Point style, and you're not. I don't know, call me a bitter Dark Souls 1 fan. I feel like Dark Souls 3 doesn't need it as much. Oh! Ooh. Oh. Oh. Oh no. Damn. I completely forgot you can't dodge roll, period. I I thought it was like, oh no, it's gonna be, everything's gonna be really fat, rolly, slow. No, 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 you. Hey, what's the document? Oh, this is my my Ariandel draft. Speaking of, I don't know why is it getting stuck on certain paragraphs? I do not understand this. This I do not get.
As to who staffed this outpost, it may have been professionals. Descriptions for the Painting Guardians set reveal legends about abominations being guided to within the painting when they had no world to belong to. Aside from echoing Priscilla's legend, this new tale implies that the Guardians who emulate the White Half-Dragon with their robes were the guiding hands.
Accurate the rumors. I guess we'll find out eventually, like Bloodborne on PC. It's one of those things that will either happen one day or it won't.
Acting on the Ariandel residents' behalf, their mission to bring more lost souls into a world where they could belong. Just as their idol found salvation from a loving lead, so too would they provide that experience for others. These representatives would be the perfect garrison for the painting's outpost,
I feel cheated.
Operated out of the walled monastery in Ariamis. And if necessary, they could still act as the painting's defenders. Even as envoys, the Painting Guardians still wield their unique flat-tipped swords with
full heavy stone, by the way.
The weapon isn't necessarily included in the legends of the painting as the localization for its description claims, only the owners. Nonetheless, it would be pulled out should the men in white face something other than a forlorn spirit in need. Their job was originally to keep out anyone not sanctioned by the gods in charge, after all, so the only change would be who they considered hostile and where they spent their time off duty. Considering that the chapel bell portends a visitor, it is possible that the envoys had a means to communicate with their superiors at the chapel, prompting them to ring the bell and alert the garrison to be ready to process new arrivals they approved for entry. If so, then the sophistication to Ariandel's security measures show how much this small country valued its security. They wanted to save as many who had suffered like them, but they refused to risk their own futures. And as always, the Painting Guardians took the initiative to be their first line of defense. Granted, the painting they defended hasn't remained whole, Gale possessing one of implicitly many scraps of the restored canvas. Whatever the specific events leading up to this outcome, it is demonstrable that the painting has been through much turmoil since arriving to the New World. Perhaps the Painting Guardians failed to save it from direct assault, perhaps natural disasters or freak accidents inflicted unexpected damage, or perhaps the change of hands and seasons simply took their toll. In the end, none since Ariandel have preserved the great painting. Fortunately for the residents, tattering the canvas doesn't affect the painting world's integrity. We can enter all the same, with Ariandel's explorable area still far larger than the mountaintop temple of Ariamis. If anything, fragmenting the painting allows for more access points inside, making it harder for the Guardians to defend outside and easier for the detested to find their new home. Whether or not that trade-off was preferable, it was another variable that the inhabitants had to plan around. Much of this does look to have been plotted out in advance. The Corvian settlement stands out for its slightly warmer climate. While the rest of Ariandel is blanketed in snow, the area in and around the village lies more exposed with vibrant greenery, foliage even growing on buildings. The existence of unfrozen water channels in town and a well behind the church likewise contrasts the ice in the valley below. It appears that Father Ariandel had deliberately painted a hospitable spot for them to build their settlement even in the familiar cold. In short, the future pastor may have already accounted for new entrants, the canvas piecemeal or whole. At the very least, retreating into the painting dimension was a smooth transition. Besides the church, each building has a tall tower, likely to simulate a crow's nest for Corvians to roost in. Add to that amenities like a communal mess hall to gather and eat, open channels to dump sewage, a well for groundwater, and village life seems comfortable. Under this new system, everyone felt warm, loved, and protected, just as the first among them ought to have been. Pure white to darkest black. The deepest part of the Ariandel chapel hides a peculiar stone. The wooden effigy set up in the back wall is a woman's head atop a string of cylindrical blocks strung together by a rope. This is obscured by a scaly tailskin sleeve overlaid with a fur cloak. The white color to both these adornments automatically brings to mind Priscilla, who bore traits of her white dragon father and wore an iconic white fur coat. Even though that coat included a special sleeve obscuring the details to her tail, this is assuredly Priscilla's tailskin dedicated as part of a memorial to the half-dragon. This becomes even more obvious looking at the lead-up to this effigy. In order to access the shrine, we must turn a crank in the crypt beneath the chapel. This activates the mechanism turning the statue of Velka directly above to face the shrine's direction, the altar thereupon opening the way leading straight to it. All of this is highly reminiscent of the means to reach Priscilla in DS1, only the figure greeting us at the end of the long passage is instead a proxy. The crossbreed died in the painting she had lived in for so long. With Priscilla's apparent death, there comes the question of when and how did she die. For the former, one possibility is that she was slain by the chosen undead during the events of DS1. Although slaying the crossbreed god was possible, she was ultimately an optional boss, so secret that defeating her was one of the few game achievements involving bosses.
There we go.
Another to receive this treatment was Gwendolyn, who was yet one more optional and easily missed encounter. And yet, item descriptions affirm that the god of the Darmoon has been devoured by Aldrich,
Wait, the
one of the lords of
Darmoon?
Cinder in the present era. In other words, Gwendolyn survived well past the lifetime of the chosen undead, making his death in the boss battle impossible. He never came into conflict with the hero of DS1, possibly never even meeting.
I swear,
therefore,
this
the same might
text
be true of
speech.
Priscilla. Of course, DS2 proved that at least some optional bosses were victims
God
of
of the
chosen undead.
Darmoon.
But Priscilla is unlikely to be among them
Wait,
given her
what the
legacy.
hell is that?
Yorshka is a dragon crossbreed as well as Gwendolyn's younger sister. This fact alone has caused
I have not done this fight in a while.
In DS1 claims the deity was Gwyn's last born, while those in DS3 refer to him as just the youngest son. However, both instances are actually using the term youngest child, so there is no discrepancy. It is impossible for Gwyn to have sired Yorshka since Gwendolyn was his last. Thus, the two are half-siblings sharing a mother, not a father, and Yorshka's relation to Priscilla is apparent. Aside from both bearing physical traits of white-scaled dragons,
Lol,
the girl
you can
is
see that's not
admittedly
fully
ignorant of the
modeled
world
there,
as if
like the
having
roof,
lived her life
only one
contained
side
in
of the
an isolated
rooftop has
area
been done.
long before her current
That's
imprisonment.
funny.
And when pondering how we managed to reach her atop her tower, she considers the possibility that we be a dragon or a crow, both flying creatures she considers nostalgic, and which did exist within the painting in DS1.
Oh,
Yorshka
look,
is unquestionably
spots of
Priscilla's
magic.
daughter, born and raised in the painting, and she wasn't alone. The painter in Ariandel covers herself in heavy robes, but close inspection reveals white scales all over her body. On top of that, she sports white hair and yellow slit pupils. All of these traits are shared with Priscilla, suggesting that the painter is another child of the crossbreed.
Come on.
The villagers do address the girl as Oju-sama, denoting a young daughter of wealth or status. As the daughter of their god, Priscilla and her family would be treated like societal elites in the village. Moreover, the painter shows incredible maturity despite her childlike appearance and, in some ways, behavior, speaking with great eloquence and formality. If she had dragon heritage, then it is only natural for her age to be misleading due to a longer lifespan. Combined with a respectful mention of her mother, and there is no reason to doubt that Ariandel's resident artist was born to Ariami's beloved half-dragon, making her Yorshka's sister and Gwendolyn's half-sister. Aside from reaffirming implications about Gwendolyn's heritage from DS1, this reveals that Priscilla had taken the time to raise a family. Her children were probably not born during the events of the original game, however. Recall in DS1 how Ariamis had been a functional prison up until recent events, leaving the prisoners to restore order until forming the society we see in Ariandel.
Alright, you
This
done?
tumultuous time within the painting leaves little opportunity
with your
for
green
romance,
magic
and Priscilla's
bullshit?
impression of her fellow residents as kind precludes the possibility of anyone resorting to less romantic means they took her security seriously, especially given the odious nature of her first birth. That being the case, we can be certain that Priscilla survived any hypothetical encounter with the chosen undead. She gave birth to her daughters at some point after the events of DS1 and raised them to the point where the painter could remember her words before her death. The father is liable to have been an unremarkable man. Outside of perhaps Yorshka's brown hair and blue eyes, there are no traces of his soul influencing their children, and his absence in the present era plus the silence surrounding it betrays his demise long ago. All things considered, this implicates him as an ordinary resident of the painting. Because the denizens mainly consisted of hollows or those who forsook humanity in DS1, it is possible that Priscilla's beloved wasn't even part of the painting community until after the shift to the new world. Whether or not he did join later on, he still managed to woo the crossbreed's heart and start a family with them. And if he was an unqualified mortal, then it is only natural that he perish long before her. We may well have passed his grave unknowingly.
just cheating
the
a little
Corvian's
bit.
parish maintains a cemetery where all villagers would have been buried by Father Ariandel. Then there is the crypt
Just a
beneath
little.
the chapel, which looks to inter far more bodies by comparison. Most likely, this is the older of the two burial sites, or at least houses older bodies than the church cemetery. Recall that the painting originally featured a ruined church with its own boneyard for those condemned to die in obscurity within the Chile prison. Following the jailbreak in DS1, even more needed to be buried eventually, and still more were sure to die off going forward. By the time Ariamis was restored as Ariandel, there were surely plenty in need of transfer to better tombs, now that the old church was buried under a fresh coat of paint. If the newly established village held any respect for the dead, they would naturally move the bodies to better accommodations, resulting in the crypt below the chapel on the peak. This explains the back entrance to the crypt, accessed from a rundown tunnel past the forest behind the parish. Construction of the crypt and settlement went hand in hand. All of this is to say that Priscilla having more children with a different father is no surprise.
Was
The
it
man
this
in question
tower, or was
simply
it
too low
over
profile
there?
to receive the same
A little
attention and
further
death as the
down.
painting's beloved half-dragon
Somewhere
girl.
around there,
She was
though.
the matriarch to lead the civilization emerging at the ruined church, maintaining that role uncontested up through Ariami's decline, where Ariandel then rose to similar prominence. From that point on, Priscilla more than likely took a back seat, letting the good father minister the flock while she and her family lived quietly in the chapel. The building already mirrors her old dwelling, and serpents, the common symbol of imperfect dragons,
Lol.
decorate the doors and walls. Her painter child even uses the attic as an atelier. It is the perfect place for the
Well-
crossbreed to remain, especially when so many of the people she knew growing up had probably already passed. As the steward,
That's what
she
I get
took
for
care those
trying
she
to
dearly missed, while
do a
Ariandel
shortcut.
nurtured the generation trickling in. One man got the reclusive god to open up, but he too came and went from her life, humbly buried like the rest. In the end, Priscilla was left with two daughters to remember her beloved by. If he was a later arrival, then the dragon god more than likely raised these offspring all on her own, with help from the community. On that note, another reason to believe that these sisters were born following the creation of Ariandel is the quirk both
damn.
share. Indeed, neither Yorshka nor the painter received a name upon their birth. The former received hers
Damn,
from
too
Gwendolyn
early.
implicitly in the outside world where we meet her. Meanwhile, the latter lingers in the painting and still remains unnamed, sympathizing with us should we claim the same. The world of Ariandel is obviously no stranger to the concept of names. It is only the children who are unique in this regard. But why would any loving parent not name their children? To answer, we need only consider how others in this world might view the action. Listening to the painter's dialogue, Priscilla was receptive to her daughter, creating a new world for them to inhabit. That was presumably her position since before Ariamis was restored. But as one of the villagers
I don't know if I should
elucidates,
say world,
their
I should
community
say
only more
land.
recently resolved to burn the
I
old
think
world
land
in
would
order
be
to make
better.
way for a new one.
I didn't
The
say
undesirables
world too
were,
much in that
understandably,
paragraph.
attached to this one place
Oh, there
they
is a
call
second
home,
one.
and so wouldn't easily part with it. If Priscilla ever expressed her response to the rotting canvas, she was almost certainly met with panic and outrage. Then, Ariandel demonstrated restoration as another option, earning him favor over the crossbreed. Suddenly, the half-dragon found herself in an unenviable position. With her stance on the matter already revealed, how could they trust that she wouldn't go ahead with forsaking them anyway? What if she tried to sabotage them behind her backs? This might have been the first time that she had ever seen the residents act anything but peaceful and kind to her. The pressure would feel overwhelming. With all that established, Priscilla had clearly stepped back from sole leadership and left her children unnamed in order to pacify the mob. After all, Ariandel and Ariamis before him named their masterpiece after themselves. In that case, What better way to signal her intent than by ensuring her legacy wouldn't have a name to carry on the tradition on her behalf? Even after the old god and master was gone, no descendant would inherit her idea, at least in theory. Combined with ceding control to Ariandel and retreating from public life, the half-dragon did what she could to let the new village feel secure in their revitalized
So it's cool, like, looking
Still,
around.
That didn't change her opinion on the matter.
Getting a better view of how where everything
After seeing her daughter's
is
talent,
in relation
Mother
to each
Dearest
other, you
most
know?
likely began prepping her in secret.
Seeing what you
She
can,
alone
the
recognized
game
that the
allows you
need
to
for a new
see.
canvas wasn't a choice, but an eventuality. According to the painter, Priscilla taught that one cannot paint the world without knowing fire, but that becoming captivated by fire is disqualifying. The use of captivated is a clear-cut reference to DS1's opening cinematic, where gods were drawn to the flame and found the Lord's souls with which they painted the outside world in their metaphorical colors. They certainly knew fire and used it to dominate the world, but their preoccupation with it above all else arguably also destroyed their grand kingdoms. The crossbreed knows from experience, having suffered under those same gods for her life huntability, just because it was the antithesis of that fire they slavishly clung to. Fire was the tool to shape the world, but always a
Alright, so that needs to be fixed. Used it to dominate the world. There we go. Da-da-da. Alright.
The crossbreed knows from experience, having suffered under those same gods for her life huntability, just because it was the antithesis of that fire they slavishly clung to. Fire was the tool to shape the world, but always a temporary stopgap for the dark to follow. To Priscilla's mind,
see, this is why we do these reviews,
when they rejected reality to drown in denial.
You never know
and now, those rejected
what
by
it
that same world the
is
gods created
that you somehow miss
fire,
after the 20th reading, you
Just
know?
like Gwyn and his ilk, Ariandel's forlorn souls were refusing to see reason. Priscilla therefore acted behind closed doors. Knowing that they couldn't prevent the painting's decay forever, and likely foreseeing the long-term consequences of delaying the inevitable, what else could she do? Love her fellow undesirables as she might, she wouldn't let them make the same mistakes as the gods who tormented her. And maybe she wouldn't live to see the consequences, but her children certainly would, and she wasn't going to leave them helplessly unequipped for the situation when the moment of crisis invariably arrived. Perhaps she hoped that everyone would come around to her thinking by that point, seeing what their decisions had wrought, and from the words of that one Corvian villager, she would be right. Contrast to the outside, they now accept that burning one rotten world to make way for the next is the decent thing to do. At last, they choose stagnation no longer. But before the villagers resolved to let their painter know fire and accept a new home, their precious dragon god had passed away.
Oh, what is this? Do you have any thoughts on the Firelink conspiracy? If so, does it offer any interesting insights? Are you talking about the YouTube channel called Firelink Conspiracy? I'll be honest, I have not actually seen any of their content, so I have no idea what those guys are like doing with that channel or what have you, right? Necessarily. That said, my chat loves to tell me about the stuff that they hear from there, and it definitely sounds bonkers, right? But I can't say for myself if it actually is or if there's anything of merit that is actually being stated or not, because again, I have not actually seen it, so I will not claim that I knew. I can only say by reputation, and that's very hard to, you know, validate. Hello, my slow-ass tree. Slow-ass tree. Yeah, I really feel like this tree, I get the idea. This tree should be programmed to do stuff, though. It should be programmed to do its thing. As soon as you get over there, it's programmed to start moving, I think. So I think the way they have it set up, it doesn't get to, you know, have that effect of like full. It never gets to actually trick people with the way it's currently set up, which is a shame.
Given the circumstances, it is suspicious. All she had been doing was welcome new migrants and care for the dead. What could have killed her? Old age? Unlikely. Even assuming that the crossbreed lacked a dragon's immortality, she should still be long-lived, especially with medial blood. The woman was far younger than most of the gods, and some of them are still around. How about illness? She should have received the best of care, and if the painting didn't filter out plague victims, then the community would have been wiped out long ago. That leaves either a tragic accident or foul play, and with the stakes at hand, there was ample motive. Even in DS1, Priscilla was always hesitant to weaponize her powers against others, despite past experience. That passivity could easily backfire, as her boss fight showcased. If the painter's hobby were to be discovered, that would lead to a confrontation, and anything can happen with tensions high. Put simply, Priscilla was probably martyred for her position, whether or not that was the perpetrator's intention. After all, she should still have been loved and respected by Velka's worshippers. Assassination was doubtless too extreme. Maybe the incident was due to an unruly mob getting out of hand when voicing their grievances to her in person. Alternatively, no one found out save for one individual. If we were to pin it on a single culprit, Father Ariandel is the obvious choice. He was the one most invested in the current painting and most liable to meet with Priscilla and her family on a regular basis. I want to say, no, that has to be like a moss or something. The man has a mean temper, flying into a violent rage when overwhelmed with emotion during our boss battle. Combined with his imposing physique, it is possible that the Corvian got too aggressive in his heated arguments about the crossbreed's betrayal and inadvertently killed her. Shoved to the ground and cracked her skull,
on the vines.
Smacked into a wall,
I think it's just really low poly, so
it would only take a single thoughtless act from seeing red. Specifics aside, the fact remains, Priscilla died, and the village was all but guaranteed at fault. No doubt Ariandel and the others felt some measure of guilt from what had occurred, hence the shrine. Even if it was unintentional, we would expect disquiet among the populace from losing their biggest mainstay. They could have even started playing the blame game. Father Ariandel, too, might have spun events to absolve himself of responsibility, but the continued respect for the pastor affirms that no suspicion fell on the Corvian regardless. Some may have even argued, in the back of their minds, that it was for the best that the god passed when she did, before she could threaten their precious painting world. Ultimately, no amount of consternation would translate into punishment for this inarguable failure. Retribution instead had to come from the outside world, in more ways than one. It is at this point that a prophecy appeared. Gale and Father Ariandel both quote this forecast of 2 ashes producing a flame someday, which they recognize as Ariami's special flame burning up the painting once 2 unkind lead come together in the painted world. This oral tradition bears some connection to Priscilla's death considering the root screens accenting her memorial. Each screen mural portrays 2 large figures with pale faces and embered arms at the center of a burning land. The figures are labeled as Stabber and Crusher in the mural's texture because one is stabbing a white snake with a sword while the other crushes an identical snake with his or her bare hands. These are clear allusions to the 2 unkind lead causing the painting to burn. The 2 snakes representing Priscilla's surviving daughters.
I feel like he changes the pronunciation every time it comes up.
And the true end of the White Dragon's legacy with the painting. None of this seems appropriate for the chapel's inner sanctum unless it bears some relation to the crossbreed's own demise. She is dead, and now prophetic words answer questions of her legacy. This begs new questions about the identity of the soothsayer. The prophecy certainly wasn't welcome to Ariandel. The village hadn't resolved to burn the painting until not long before we, the alleged second Ash, entered the snowy world. The screen mural likewise depicts the 2 ashes in black cloaks, their faces obscured by hoods like some terrible grim reapers, the trees burning behind them dead as autumn while the residents burning below them pleading like the damned in hell. Nothing about the image paints the tradition in a positive light, only reminding visitors to Priscilla's memorial that they will be helpless as these augured ushers of change destroy the last of what they love right before their eyes. The powers that be, chiefly Father Ariandel, must be reluctant to acknowledge this future to the restored painting. Who then could convince the village that the prophecy is not just legitimate but unignorable? The answer lies behind the same mural. A root screen serves to partition the laity from the altar during religious service, and we do find altars in the 4 corners of the room behind both screens. Like the shrine to Priscilla, each altar is relatively small. And while the above niche is missing its idol, we can infer who is dedicated from the copious books laid upon the actual altar, just like in the village church. Tables and chairs with yet more books have been set up before the altars and screens. The village library's statues spanning the walls in between.
I can't
this
screw this up!
Velka, a place where those fearful of the prophecy or guilty about Priscilla's death might come to pray for forgiveness. Indeed, the goddess of sin was certain to learn about what had transpired, through their appeals to her idols or otherwise. Given her associations, one might wonder if the crows circling the chapel overhead are her familiars. And the mother of the forlorn would be angered to hear of her one true daughter's premature death under their protection. That is the one sin she will never forgive. And was it not her duty to mete out the punishment for sin?
Rendering
In short,
properly?
Velka is the most likely source for the oral tradition, a goddess whom the painting's worshippers cannot disregard. One might question how she was able to accurately predict Ariandel's future, considering the specificity. However, if there is anyone to legitimately possess powers of prophecy, it would be the witch knowledgeable of all magical arts. Maybe she peered into the abyss to briefly see across time and space, or maybe she utilized just Ariami's flame. Whatever her method, the god of sin made a reliable and, more importantly, credible assertion about Ariandel's fate. As the games have established, history can be distorted, but the past itself cannot be changed, so sharing the facts wouldn't affect the outcome. And even if the events would come to pass regardless, sharing them served as a condemnation for the people's sins, to know that their resistance, which brought about the half-dragon's demise, cursed them with the awareness of its futility. Priscilla died for nothing, and now no one would comfort them in the meantime. Velka's involvement further explains the painter's immortality. When killed, the girl appears to perish like any other NPC, except she will return without change after refreshing at a bonfire. From her post-mortem dialogue, the crossbreed can't truly die, allegedly because she is to paint the next world. In other words, someone must have cursed her with such miraculous resurrection as a safeguard against those poised to prevent the village from embracing a new home at any cost.
Cool to think?
There are only 2 individuals with motive, Priscilla and Velka.
Like, I don't think many people do, but isn't it cool to think you can, like,
why not do
look
the same for
back
herself and the
behind
rest of
you?
the family? That
And you
leaves the
can see
grandmother,
the
who has both
entire
knowledge
fort
to
there.
impose such a curse, and the
I think the
incentive
boss
after
is
seeing
also
how the
visible
village
from
failed
here, if I
Priscilla.
recall.
She couldn't trust Father Ariandel and the others to sit idly by as the prophecy was fulfilled, and so the witch cast a spell to deny them the chance to stop a new painting when the hour did arrive. The curse probably relates to the painting of Ariandel itself. After all, every curse of immortality has a source, whether it be the owner's soul or some external concentration of power. In her case, what better way to safeguard her life from the painted world's inhabitants than to bind her soul to the dying world? This would fit with why the painter has never left her cold world like Yorshka has. She physically can't so long as she is tied down inside of the dimension. It could also justify her adolescent appearance compared to her sister, assuming that she has lived a comparable age surpassing typical human lifespans. Moreover, this makes it impossible for anyone to destroy the painter without also destroying the painting. Until the snowy land has burned up entirely, she is safe from lasting harm and impossible to remove from the equation. In that scenario, the Corvian village has no choice but to accept the prophecy and the inheritor of Priscilla's will as their deliverance. Velka's judgment is absolute, thus the sinners could only repent as they awaited the ash to arrive. They still dreaded this inevitability, so it was an apt punishment, not to mention a way to honor the crossbreeds will from a mother who also failed to save her beloved child. Did the goddess still care to listen to the painting world's prayers after that? If so, maybe it was only the lack of their desperation. Even so, the crowmen's worship continued, piling on guilt and regrets as they held out hope for their precious Ariandel's survival. But Priscilla was still dead. Nothing could remain the same. Clinging to a fantasy for as long as possible, they had yet to realize that sobering reality. Spread word of bird. The loss of Priscilla left a hole which just kept growing.
Wait, what?
It was presumably
Why
at
did
this
that
point
one
that
not
the
take
outpost was
forever
abandoned
to-
to become the ruins
What?
we know at present. Most likely, the painting
I
guardians
just
on
read
staff
that and it
followed Yorshka
moved
out of
on. The other
Saint
one took like a
They could only
minute.
acquire the guardian's equipment in the vicinity of the daughter, with no sign of them inside Ariandel. This makes sense.
I don't know
since the
how any of
painting's
this works,
protectors worship
chat.
Priscilla, their pure white robes and dance-like swordplay embodying her elegant form. With Priscilla dead, what point was there to remaining as the painting's protectors, filtering who came in? Clearly, their screening didn't change anything. Because the painter is safely immortal, the only remnant of Priscilla still in need of guarding is Yorshka, especially if she was departing for the outside
There we
world
go.
she never knew. Therefore, they too had probably abandoned Ariandel to its fate. This didn't stop undesirables
it
from
feels
stumbling
so
into the painting.
good
As we can see,
to see-
entire groups like the Farron
to see
followers
stuff
or
like
Millwood
that,
Knights
you know?
have found their way inside, though they have chosen to roam the wilds as hollows rather than integrate into Corvian society. Other late arrivals may have opted to become part of the village, the final destination for these traveler souls, but it was no longer an organized system as before. While this surely exposed the village to more dangers, the community seems to have retained the view of their world as a haven for
And
outcasts like them.
Orlando!
Keeping that in mind, they sought to continue adding to their number, saving as many as possible. To facilitate that, they needed new envoys to bring in those fresh faces. And naturally, the religious body stepped up to the plate. Certain Corvians have taken it upon themselves to spread the good word of Ariandel. These so-called storytellers share the legends of Priscilla, the painting, and its guardians to other undesirables in the outside world with the obvious promise that they too can find salvation in the land of Velka. To no one's surprise, their heretical message finds sway among the poor, pitiful, and desperate. Preaching or supervising, the storytellers are always found guiding a small congregation of fellow Corvians. Unlike the Ariandel villagers, these crow men
Do you think
look more
there's any
human,
lost
their
potential
only
considering the
uniquely alien
angelic
quality
faith
being
in
their
Dark Souls
scaly,
3? I
the
think
lone
they're
feet
fairly
in digitigrade
interesting.
stance.
Lost
Still, they do have
potential?
the same blackened skin and hunched backs, so we can infer that these congregates are simply at an
All right.
earlier stage of transformation on
Let me
account of
pause
their
this
more
for a second. Okay, so lost potential is an interesting way to put it because it's like, all right, it means that it's not necessarily whether they're good or bad. It's could they have done so much, or let's just say significantly better than what we ultimately got. And in that sense, I don't know. I feel like they're pretty, like, they're pretty late into the timeline. They don't get to exist a lot, so there's not really that much history to be built upon with them. They mostly tie into the larger Londor plotline, so I can't really say there's a lot missing there. Woo! Damn. 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 So I can't really say there's a lot missing there. I suppose you might be able to make the argument that we don't really see a lot of variety. Like, it's always just big boys with like either axes or halberds beheading, right? Like, we don't get to see like, oh, here's some commoners who are part of the angelic faith or secretly part of it or something, right? Like, or here's the blacksmith who has actually secretly betrayed or whatever. So I guess they could have done a little bit more to kind of like expand on how the conspiracy came about, but I don't know if I would say there's any lost potential, right? I feel like, relative to like every other faction and stuff that we get in these games and things, I feel like they were fairly developed. And I can't say that like I hate what we got, you know? All right, let's see what we got here.
and conversion to Velka worship. In fact, we bear witness to these crows sprouting their wings as they deepen their devotion to their new mother. Until not too long ago, these Corvians were human, specifically undead. The storytellers typically possess hollow gems, titanite altered in absorbing the undead curse. In comparison, their flock possess striving stones. This forfeit stone resembles shed insect skin, sickly white, cracked open, and hollowed out. That is why the altered titanite is also called a husk stone, and the name gives the impression that the Corvians have similarly cast off something from their bodies. Indeed, the stone has lost any special effect it once had other than bonding, making it the perfect receptacle for the unique powers of weapons it is hammered into.
So this is like
We
New
thus
Game
use
Plus
striving stones
too?
to remove any weapon enhancements from other gems, but then wouldn't that make those stones husks themselves?
Or I
Put
should say
simply,
New
the
Game
striving
Plus
stone
Plus?
implies that the Corvians were similarly
I'm pretty
sucked drive
sure.
power, namely their humanity at the
Doing
heart
pretty
of
good.
the undead curse. The storytellers help with casting out their human nature, like an exorcism. And the result is hollow gems, not dark gems, because the preacher's worshippers are specifically bearers of the Darsign. Lothric is
Man,
currently
blood
a
red,
with
blood
close
red.
cast out of
Where the
secret
hell is
society.
my
The
poison
Corvian
clump?
storytellers would find no shortage of undead looking for a place to
Crazy.
belong. We see this in the behavior of the converts. Many craft especially large daggers to defend themselves with, but the
Alright.
description acknowledges this to be the bluff of a pathetic soul scared at our simple approach, like a cornered animal. These trembling and evasive creatures suddenly lash out wildly, desperate to survive. The stress might even be why their transformation advances at that exact moment. Furthermore, trading in their striving stones to pickle peanuts us the I'm sorry carving. These Corvians are traumatized by the scorn of others and see Ariandel as their escape. We do find more of them praying
Ah,
the sanctuary
damn.
in front of the chapel.
Too
the
late.
Corvian in the cave is another such example. Next to him kneels a corpse clutching a rime blue moss clump close to the chest with a smile, happy to have finally reached the coal. The
Man,
storytellers
V.
have been proselytizing effectively, without question, and we can infer the depth of their flock's knowledge from their weapons. Some of these Corvians have crafted sides,
Really?
each possessing a lacerating
I guess I
flesh.
gotta do go
Despite
away.
the localization claiming that the bleeding is so profuse that it splatters on the wielder, the text actually echoes Life Hunt Scythe in the deadly bleeding effect simultaneously rebounding on the user. Much like that weapon crafted with Priscilla's soul in DS1, the Corvian Scythe possesses the incredible capacity to reap life while acknowledging their own vulnerability to that power. This plus the description's
Damn.
reference to the painting's master affirms that
Really?
they are
I
trying
got
to
double
imitate Priscilla.
tap there?
The storytellers
That's
inform the
crazy.
faithful about every little detail concerning the legendary half-dragon, which shouldn't be astonishing when these missionaries wield a sorcerer's staff. Befitting Velka's worshippers, they rely on detailed facts to animate their
damn.
tales, lending credence. Helping along with this credibility is first-hand experience. The storytellers themselves are undesirables who have yet to fully transform. More than likely, they consist of previous pilgrims to the painting,
okay.
where they begged for sanctuary, received an audience,
There we go.
learned from the chapel, then returned to the outside world to bring in more like them while deepening their faith,
Demon
until they
Titanite.
finally complete their transformation into a crow and can be welcomed as a proper member. That explains why they alone possess wings before the flock engages in battle, as well as how they get around far and wide across Lothric. They have definitely been
Andre.
to the painting first, since they have the ability to spew fire from the tip of their staves, the wood of the staff presumably born from the flame power of Arimis and the painting. They have confirmed the truth to the legends with their own eyes, making their message all the more appealing. It is no wonder that a storyteller
We are
demands
so
so much respect
close.
from his audience. In his esteemed position, a single screech can send the wild flock into a frenzy, rushing to their preacher's aid following their winged transformation. The only question is how long they must listen to him regale them of the old tales before they are sent off to find that paradise for themselves. Perhaps they are directed to a piece of the canvas kept safely tucked away somewhere, or perhaps they are simply expected to wander until stumbling upon it. It might even be that they are asked to wait until they hear the toll of the bell to beckon them. Whatever the specifics, those undesirables we encounter on the outside are yet in the early stages, hanging onto their teacher's every word. And although advertising
I
the
don't
painting
know.
to the rejected
I
and
can't tell
downtrodden
if
has
I'm-
seen overwhelming success,
if I'm
the
at the
storyteller's
point
honey
yet.
words downplay an ugly truth as of late. These witnesses to the haven, like their staves, have been corrupted by rot. Infestation illustration. All
I
across
feel like
Ariandel,
it's a
you will
fast
find
roll.
patches of the painted world covered in anomalies. Upon closer look, it appears to be a kind of fungi. The Corvian of the cave identifies this with the rot, and it is consistent with what learned from the storytellers. Fungi have similarly parasitized the top end of their wooden staves, the corruption
What?
unleashed as noxious spores. There are disparities. The painting's corruption tends to resemble the Xylaria polymorpha to Scleroderma species of fungi, whereas the staff appears covered in more common polypore and mushroom species. The painting species are also consistently colored blood
The
red, while the
what?
staff fungi
With what we learn from the storytellers, I was like, I heard that wrong. I'm pretty sure with what we learn. It's hard to tell when is it just the text to speech just being weird and actually forgotten words and stuff. To resemble the. There we go. There we go.
and Scleroderma species of fungi, where
Actually, no, this should be or.
Scleroderma species of fungi, whereas the staff appears covered in more common polypore and mushroom species.
All right.
The painting species are also consistently colored blood red, while the staff fungi is unambiguously
All right.
bleached. The discrepancies may be due to evolutions of the concept between the game's launch and the release of the DLC when Ariandel first became accessible. At the same time, the staff's description acknowledges the variety in the corruption, so the differences aren't irreconcilable. In fact, the rot even takes on non-fungal forms. The Corvian village is the area most infested with the rot's corruption, and that includes the Corvians themselves. Each villager drags around solidified dung hanging out of the rear like a tail, hair-like growths emergent from the filth. In more severe cases, the crowman's entire body is sprouting roots, and will vomit not just filthy but toxic blood. These crows aren't healthy, and the only explanation for their condition is the rot. You are what you eat, as the saying goes, and what have the villagers been feeding on in their mess hall if not produce of the painting, in other words, the painting itself. After years and years of assimilating Ariandel's substance, that substance is now rotting the Corvians from the inside out. Not even the storytellers, with their relatively brief sojourns, have been immune to this corruption, their bodies and souls apparently sullied even if they have yet to show visible symptoms. With no other notable irregularity within the painting, we can be certain that the storytellers wield not just the painting's flame, but also its rot. The parasitic element to the rot becomes still more clear-cut inside of the painted world. Spreading alongside the fungi is a mess of worms, probably akin to maggots. This is because the rot is often accompanied by giant humanoid flies feasting amidst the corruption. These painting corroders are, as the name suggests, agents of the rot. The term corrosion itself combines the kanji for rot and eat, explaining their veracity. The rot well and truly eats away at the canvas, and as we can see how the process develops to maturity. When the hungry manflies grab to gnaw on us, their abdominal segment simultaneously injects us with their spawn, the burrowing worms slowly bleeding us dry as they devour our bodies. If the infestation is left uncleansed, it is plain as day that the maggots will become more
Uncleansed.
corroders. Hovering around rot in the chapel crypt are manflies the size of actual flies, so they grow from smaller size. In that case, both the fungus and the fly they spawn produce living manifestations to further spread the rot, both literally and figuratively feeding into each other. This hasn't stopped the influx of migrants to Ariandel. As the Corvian of the cave highlights, most are just happy to have a place to go and rest their heads, even if the bed is rotten. Still, why does the painting's corrosion with time take these various forms when it should be flame that emerges from the natural decay? Because this time, it is not the rod of Ariamis, but Ariandel. From the flies, we can nonetheless loot human pine resin, which primarily consists of man's rotted body fluids. These fluids are of a dark nature, hence the item's ability to augment weapons with such power once coated in a viscous substance. This would imply that the rot has a connection to the dark, not fire. And yet, the manflies aren't affected by the Wolf Knight's great sword, which was designed to disproportionately harm the dark servants. Therefore, the manfly's connection to the abyss must come from a less direct source of humanity than, say, the pus of man. The answer then would be the body fluids of the man which currently comprise the painting, the blood of Father Ariandel. This idea finds further support in subtler respects. The rot is commonly juxtaposed with corpses carrying various altered titanite. Together, they serve as hints to the underlying nature of this corruption. In one case, it is a poison gem, due to the hazardous nature of the rot already mentioned.
There we go.
Then there is a blessed gem, because the blood is sourced from a holy man, a dark gem, because that holy man is tied to Velka, a simple gem, because it was through magic that he restored the painting. And finally, a shriving stone, because that holy man of Velka with magical expertise is a Corvian. Taking this all into consideration, the rot's ravenous appetite may, in part,
I
come from
underestimated
human
those
blood and touch
archers.
with its humanity as part of the transformation into a crow. The spontaneous generation of flies is similarly consistent with dark souls, maggots appearing in rotten meat historically used as evidence of that concept, even. Regardless, the pastor is the only character to embody all of these elements. Factor in the corruption's red color, and the painting's corroders are, without a doubt, derived from Ariandel's handiwork. The horrifying results are to be expected. Just like Ariami's flameborn pigments, the blood of Ariandel inevitably suffered entropy. And once the power of his soul could no longer subsist on itself, it instinctively began eating into its own construct. The magical dimension revitalized by the painting's restoration is now victim to its very own building blocks in the form of a more aggressive rot. One might argue that this was always the case, since the grass sprouting from the dark stagnation in the outside world is used generically throughout Ariandel. It may be coincidence, since the
That's a
model was
medium
originally
roll.
used
Good
for
to
tall
know.
grass
Thank
in Bloodborne.
you,
But given how
Clippy.
limited it appears in the rest of the game, including its other DLC, it is possible that this widespread appearance signals how the world painted with blood partially mixed with humanity
Oh, he didn't
has
do
produced
anything.
inherent stagnation.
Oh, that-
in itself evidently wasn't a problem for the world, but the non-dark element creates a disparity which the greedy dark naturally preys upon. The end result
Yeah.
is Ariandel's masterpiece eating
Also,
itself.
he went
The rot being
flying.
what it is,
Holy.
there is no simple solution other than abandoning the painting. As creatures of dark and Ariandel's rot, both the
Dark
flies
Knight
and their
weapons,
maggots are
man.
especially vulnerable to fire,
Black Knight,
the
I
latter
should say.
purged by merely holding a torch. The decay of old Ariamis can ironically cleanse the world and potentially its inhabitants of their affliction. But that might only occur if the flame is no longer smothered by blood. As is, the rotted pigment is festering but not evaporating, slowly but surely sustaining itself on what has yet to decompose. Maybe one day it will begin to eat into the fiery framework of this dimension, but that is only after both rot and flame finish gorging on that unspoiled sustenance. In the meantime, the people endure a pox on their home, with the fire on hand falling well short of ridding them of this red plague. Now more than ever, they need the unkind lead of the prophecy. The only problem is that these fireless Ashborn on the outside must be willing to cooperate. And on that front, the promise of a black-haired witch wouldn't be so straightforward. A wolf in dragon's clothing.
Maybe I don't
The
need to
first
put in the
unkind led
black
Ash to
hair
arrive was
portion.
Elfriede.
Maybe I could
After
just say a
entering Ariandel,
witch.
the woman from Launder became a nun at the chapel, reinventing herself as simply Freed. Perhaps because this was a dreaded moment for the painting's inhabitants, Freed did everything she could to appear
Oh, I
harmless and much more.
forgot.
For one, she adopts a form according to their wishes, Priscilla's form specifically. The sweardsman covers herself in a thick dress,
Oh,
wears
I
no
killed
shoes
him
to strike
already,
the cold,
okay.
wields a scythe, and uses the chill of the painting coating it to make herself invisible, all consistent with the crossbreed's portrayal in DS1. Becoming a sister of the cloth was all part of filling the hole the half-dragon left in that chapel, anything to emulate Priscilla since that was who the village of undesirables dearly missed. And Freed became a kindly surrogate mother to not just the residents, but the painter as well. Portraits of a nun dressed, naturally, in pure white like Priscilla fill every corner of the chapel's main chamber. Although missing the facial
feel
scar
like something
Elfriede
like
hides
this
beneath
could
her
have
hair
been,
and black
you know,
hood, it is obvious an idealized
polished
portrait of
up
her.
a little.
We see the painter constantly trying to draw, even when not in front of her canvas. When deprived of all her tools, she just tries to scratch her mental image into a table. This many paintings below her atelier is assuredly her work, in which case her choice of subject is rather revealing. Sometimes it is Freed posing for the picture, sometimes it is while she is busy examining other paintings, and sometimes it is her noticing mid-examination. Clearly, the painter had a compulsive desire to make the unkind led her muse, loving to draw the nun as the pure, maternal figure she strived to be an absent of the girl's real mother. It is a telling sign of their peaceful life together in that chapel, which went on for quite a long time since some paintings are markedly older than others. Eventually, however, the newer paintings began to take on an additional motif, Freed's image consumed by flame. Perhaps this was the painter no longer able to contain her
Dark Knight.
anticipation, as the hour of the prophecy drew ever nearer. Nevertheless, it highlights
Not
that
even a
Freed's
Dark
true
Knight,
role soon
Dark
hung
Knight.
overhead in their relationship. For the painter, this apparently wasn't a source of stress. In the end, the girl makes no mention of the nun standing in for her mother, nor shows desperation over the rot slowly consuming her people. Her lack of concern with everything around her comes off as almost surreal. Perhaps she feels secure in
great
knowing the
Dark
future
Knight
and her role in it,
Freed.
but there is never a question in the girl's mind that she will perform and succeed. Everything else is secondary to Priscilla's wish for her, and Freed was never going to supplant that. In short, the unkindled feelings were irrelevant. It thus comes as no surprise that the painter seems unbothered by how the prophecy came to spoil their relationship. Even if they might as well not exist to the painter, the villagers of Ariandel were suffering. Faced with the consequences of their decisions, the undesirables have had a change of heart. Predictable as that is, the reasons appear to be more nuanced. The one
I
talking
forgot.
with Crow villagers
I was like,
fears
where's the
Crow
third
Rock,
guy?
not because of the anguish or horror of his situation, but because it means that they are no different from the outsiders who detested them, and they detest in turn. The village realized all too late that they had, ironically, made the same mistakes as the outside world, clinging to a world long past its expiration date, leaving it to fester and rot worse than
I
any
know, I
unknown
was like, there's
creature
no
that
way I
awaits
killed
them.
that guy
Only
already,
after experiencing
right?
the full consequences do they realize the wisdom of Priscilla's words, the words they foolishly disregarded. Seeing that they are wretched sinners through and through, it is only right that they rectify their transgressions. And so, they resolved to go through with burning the painting before the second ash had even arrived. Regardless of the tradition's veracity, they would no longer evade the issue. But while they may have been ready to make way for the next painted world, Braid was not. According to our friendly villager, she hid the fire from them all, robbing the village of their resolve in the process. The nun allegedly accomplished this by tricking Father Ariandel into cooperating. From the earliest we can visit the chapel, we will hear the periodic sound of the pastor self-flagellating, as confirmed in the DLC's announcement trailer. Strapped to a chair secured in place within the inner sanctum, he endlessly draws blood from his back with a cat o' nine tails. Although the localization refers to this weapon as a flail, it is more accurate to call it a rose whip, hence the name Rose of Ariandel. Like certain priests throughout Earth's history, flogging oneself with this can induce a spiritual awakening, in our case, increasing the strength of our miracles for a short time. But Ariandel isn't trying to just deepen his faith, but to drip blood into the large stone bowl before him. As the Corvian relates, he needs his whip to keep the fire from flickering in the basin, and eventually overflowing. The embers buried at the bottom underneath all the blood do betray the bowl as a source of fire, which Ariandel later unleashes during our boss battle. Considering this function, plus the basin's resemblance to the Lord Vessel from DS1, it was most likely one of the tools Ariamis used to paint his world back in Aenor Londo. Maybe it
I
was
feel like you
originally
said priest, I should say clergy, because I'm pretty sure it's more common among monks than it was among actual priests.
Is channeled through this magic bowl. This allows an individual to monitor flare-ups caused by the pigment's decay and react accordingly before the flame spills over into the painting dimension. Ariandel presumably retrieved this from the original Ariamis world before making his restoration and kept it in his custody thereafter. Now, in captivity, he applies his paint not to the canvas, but the firepower directly. With his original blood rotting, new feed is required to keep the first layer of magic paints from breaking down as well. This is Freed's plan to prevent the prophecy, to have Ariandel continuously supply blood to appease the flame.
Holy hell, your flock is so massive!
The only issue then is the emergence of the second ash. But to prevent Ariandel from drawing any attention to itself, the chapel's bell was quietly removed and discarded. This worked, as according to the Corvian in the cave, we are the first newcomer in quite a while. No one kind-led would be drawn to an unassuming scrap of canvas and enter their world unprompted. And even in the unlikely scenario that Ash were to stumble into the painting, Freed seems to have set up an undead bonfire in the chapel to guide them right back out before they learn of the oral tradition. Acting as the secret gatekeeper to Father Ariandel, the nun redirects any disturbances to the pastor's private meditations. She has certainly arranged everything to isolate the man from anyone who might dissuade him. The man likewise acts dependent upon her. However, that ignores Ariandel's part in this plan. The description of his whip implies that he was the one to concoct the means to suppress the flame, and his dialogue leaves no ambiguity to his knowledge about the matter. It is Ariandel who demands Freed return his flail as he notices flame begin to stir again within the basin. He is fully aware that his actions go against the prophecy, yet commits to it wholeheartedly. The Crow Man also showcases the capability to break free of his restraints.
I would not be too
serve more as a
surprised.
formality than anything. Much like Anastasia in DS1, the pastor's confinement appears self-imposed, a disincentive to give up as he endlessly subjects himself to pain. There was no trick when it comes to getting the man to spill his own blood. As the restorer, it is only right that he completes this duty to the end. Cut dialogue does have him beg Freed to burn everything with his final breath, but this is framed as Ariandel giving up on his precious painting at the very end, which may be why it was scrapped. By all indications, the pastor is just as dedicated to stopping the painting's self-immolation as Freed is. Thus, under closer scrutiny, the good father doesn't appear to have been deceived at all.
Well,
Insofar that he was tricked, it is that Freed played into his existing biases to bring him on side. After all, the Corvian was already attached to his restoration and naturally reluctant to see it go. How much would it really take to push him into defying his gods as they approach the finish line? Self-flagellation is traditionally performed as a form of penance for the devout to alleviate guilt for their sins, and Ariandel has much to feel guilty about. In a twisted sense, he is...
Alright, you, what the hell is this? Self-what? Am I crazy? Let me look this up. Yeah, it is wrong. Why didn't that... Yeah, now you say it's wrong. Yeah, I don't know why that didn't say that was wrong before. That was weird. Anyway, where is it? Minor flare-ups. Priests. Starting clergy. Like certain medieval clergy. That I think is fair. I don't like mentioning like Earth, quote unquote, or you know, real life or something like that. I try to avoid that if possible. I try to focus on the actual history of the places we're talking about. So, yeah, what a shocker! 70. This is a world. Paint his world back in Aenor Londo. outside its expiration date. In the outside world. Let's just have land there. I could have swore. Did I miss it? Painted world, outside world. Outside world, clean to world. I could have swore. Maybe it just doesn't look as bad when I'm looking at the text, but I could have swore I used world a lot more often. Like there was like 3 in a row at some point. Can't be that low in the totem, right? Return to the outside world, deepening their faith. The world. The world. Here we go. That's a lot of worlds there too, but what better way to safeguard her life from the painted world's inhabitants than to bind her soul to the dying, to that same dying world? Ooh, this would fit with why the painter never left her. Left her cold homeland. Yeah, I think we want to vary up the use of world. So I think I'm going to do a pass and see if I can. There's places where it's like, okay, I can get away with saying land or homeland versus world here, just so we can like look. Here's another one where like there's just so many instances of this. So yeah, I think that'd be fair, right? All things considered. I'm pretty sure it's a mistranslation of Dark Knight that the games have just kept up throughout the series. Is that sure? Is that so? They just call them Dark Nuts? I mean, I guess if it's kind of like a meme or something, like I can imagine translators being like, you know what, let's just keep it. It's consistent with the older games. And it's, you know, Legend of Zelda is generally considered more kiddie on average, right? So it's something that's suitably appropriate for the demographic. Habits of their affliction. All right. All right, so looking at this, it looks like we did a decent enough job. What part were we on again? Oh, yeah, we already got that part. We are here. There. Yeah, we were on Flagellate. Yeah, so here. All right, let's try to listen through to this thing from the beginning again.
But while they may have been ready to make way for the next painted world, Freyed was not. According to our friendly villager, she hid the fire from them all, robbing the village of their resolve in the process. The nun allegedly accomplished this by tricking Father Ariandel into cooperating. From the earliest, we can visit the chapel. We will hear the periodic sound of the pastor self-flagellating, as confirmed in the DLC.
What's up with Dark Souls lore? Do you think I've lost potential to some degree?
He endlessly draws blood from his back with a cat o' 9 tails. Although the localization refers to this weapon as a flail, it is more accurate to call it a rose whip, hence the name Rose of Ariandel. Like certain medieval clergy, flogging oneself with this can induce a spiritual awakening, in our case, increasing the strength of our miracles for a short time.
Because I kind of have to put myself into, if we had just Dark Souls 1 lore, what could we expand on? I think Ornstein would definitely be an argument. Like, there's a lot of mystery over what's going on with Ornstein exactly, and whether or not From Software had actually decided on what those specifics to that were. I think there's still a lot of potential that's been lost now that it's been decided, like, okay, this is the history of Ornstein from before Dark Souls 1 to the events after, you know, the game.
the painting is channeled through this magic bowl. This allows an individual to monitor flare-ups caused by the
that's
pigment's
been
decay
lost.
and react accordingly before the flame spills over into the painting dimension. Ariandel presumably retrieved this from the original Arimus world before making his restoration and kept it in his custody thereafter.
I think
now,
we also
in captivity,
lost,
he applies his paint not to the canvas, but the firepower directly. With his original blood rod,
we also
Youth Fiend is
lost
required to keep the first layer of
some
magic paint
potential
from breaking down as well. This is
with
Freed's plan to
the-
prevent the prophecy, to have Ariandel continuously supply blood to appease the flame. From that one spot, those two can keep
I
suppressing
think
the
we
fire
lost some
indefinitely.
potential to actually
The only
kind of
issue then
see
is
what
the
goes
emergence
on
of
with
the
Anor
second
Londo and
act. But to
stuff,
prevent Ariandel from
because of the
drawing
events
any
of Dark
attention to
Souls 2
itself,
kind of
the
forcing
chapel
us to
style
have
was
parts of
quietly
Anor
removed
Londo
and
kind of
discarded.
disappear,
This
right?
worked as
It would have been
according to the
interesting to
Corvian
see
in the cave, we are the
what
first newcomer in quite a while.
how the
No
history and
unkind lead
stuff
would be
might
drawn
have
to an
changed
unassuming
if
scrap of
we
canvas
never
and
had
enter
the
their world
drift
unprompted.
to
And
cause
even
all
in the
these setting
unlikely scenario
changes
that
if
Ash were to
everything had
stumble into the
otherwise
painting,
remained basically
Freed
the
seems to have
same.
set up an undead bonfire in the chapel to guide them right back out before they learn of the oral tradition. Acting as the secret gatekeeper to Father Ariandel, the nun redirects any disturbances to the pastor's private meditations. She has certainly arranged everything to isolate the man from anyone who might dissuade him. The man likewise acts dependent upon her. However, that ignores Ariandel's part in this plan. The description of his whip implies that he was the one to concoct the means to suppress the flame, and his dialogue leaves no ambiguity to his knowledge about the matter. It is Ariandel who demands Freed return his flail as he notices flame begin to stir again within the basin. He is fully aware that his actions go against the prophecy, yet commits to it wholeheartedly. The Crow Man also showcases the capability to break free of his restraints. The straps serve more as a formality than anything. Much like Anastasia in DS1, the pastor's confinement appears self-imposed, a disincentive to give up as he endlessly subjects himself to pain. There was no trick when it comes to getting the man to spill his own blood. As the restorer, it is only right that he completes this duty to the end. Cut dialogue does have him beg Freed to burn everything with his final breath, but this is framed as Ariandel giving up on his precious painting at the very end, which may be why it was scrapped. By all indications, the pastor is just as dedicated to stopping the painting's self-immolation as Freed is. Thus, under closer scrutiny, the good father doesn't appear to have been deceived at all. Insofar that he was tricked, it is that Freed played into his existing biases to bring him on side. After all, the Corvian was already attached to his restoration and naturally reluctant to see
What
it
was
go.
the weirdness
How
with
much would it really
Ornstein?
take to push him into defying his gods as they
Thramt
approach
had
the
some
finish
weird
line?
values
Self-flagellation
given
is
to
traditionally performed as a form of
Ornstein's
penance,
equipment,
for the
which
devout to
were
alleviate guilt for their
inconsistent with,
sins, and
you know,
Ariandel
the
has much to
patterns you
feel guilty
see with
about.
other
In a
equipments and
twisted
stuff like
sense,
that.
he is sinning
It
to
didn't
deny
really
faith with
fall
the
into
blood and
cleanly
suffering inflicted
into
to
like
people.
any
The
camp,
flail
like
even comprises Corvian
you know,
talents,
because
as if
Ornstein
his
was a
flock were
dragon
doing the
slayer.
punishment.
He'd really,
That kind
or
of
like it
contradiction
was inconsistent with
insinuates
other stuff we
Ariandel as a
saw
tortured soul,
in
knowing what
that
he does is
relation
wrong
and
yet compelled to
everything.
persist with it.
So it just
And
was
such
this weirdness where it's like,
selfishness,
okay, there's
masked by shame and
obviously
religious
something
fervor,
going on
makes a
there.
person easy to manipulate into indulging
But
further.
at least
Put
with
another
Dark
way,
Souls 1
Father
lore,
Ariandel's
I at
behavior
least
may
could
be
not
genuine,
come to the
but is still
determination
performative, a
on what
rationalization for
exactly
his
that
mind to
was,
justify
let alone
betraying
it
his
was
conscience.
what Dark Souls
Of
2
course,
and
Freed's
3
success was
ended
probably
up
due as much to her similarity to Priscilla
indicating it
as
to
to
be.
Ariandel's weakness in character.
So it's one of
It is
those
seeing her
things where it
lying
was
seemingly
like,
dead in a pool of her own blood that shakes the man to his core, literally trembling. In that moment,
right.
did he see the god killed so long ago? Reliving the trauma, which first racked him with guilt, would explain the surge in emotion. Faced with the same sight, he couldn't let it happen again, even if it meant forgoing everything include his prior stance on flame. That explains the pastor's raw desperation to ember the unkindled's blood and body, thereby bring her back to life. All this time,
it's amazing what you discover when listening to this stuff again. Cause like, how the hell did I miss this? Like how, I remember reading this sentence over and over. I don't remember this ever having this area. Like, it's just amazing what your brain will do, you know?
faced with the same sight, he couldn't let it happen again, even if it
I'm
meant
more
forgoing
confused than
everything,
normal.
including his
Don't
prior
worry,
stance
we
on
all
flame.
are.
That explains the pastor's raw desperation to ember the unkindled's blood and body, thereby bring her back to life. All this time, Ariandel has seen Priscilla in Freed, the one person who might still sway him. From the inner sanctum, the Corvian has the half-dragon's memorial constantly staring through
I
his
wish
soul
we could have
from
met
behind,
Guinevere.
an endless reminder of his
Ooh,
failings.
that's
Yet
another
her
one.
memory drives him
Actually
on,
being able to
not
meet
carry out her will,
Guinevere
but
in
to bury it.
person.
Why? Because if he
It's-
doesn't,
yeah,
what
it's
does he
very
die
interesting
for?
how Miyazaki,
Consider Ariandel's perspective. He doesn't want to see the
wanted to
painting he
keep
restored
her
abandoned,
away
yet
from
deeply
being a
regrets
character
letting
we ever
that sentiment
physically
rob them
meet.
of the loveliest god they have
I wonder if
ever
there's
known.
this idea
As a
that
result,
he liked the
feels
idea
powerless
of
against the
Guinevere
will
as
of
this
fate, so lets
idealistic
events take their
image
course.
who
Yet
the
lingers
real
still that
person
nagging
could never live up
This is
to.
fate. Priscilla's death was
So it just sort of
unnecessary.
existed in
Simply
your
the sin to
head.
bear. But then Freed, a girl so similar to Priscilla, steps in and tells him that it is okay to want this world preserved. This Priscilla encouraged him to pursue his wants, to not let his sins be in vain. God's death has to mean something. To give up on the painting now is to accept the tragedy of his actions. If his foolishness is to serve anyone, he must persevere, not turn back. Even knowing it is a sin, he will bear it, so long as it balances out. Haunted by such complicated feelings for Priscilla, it is easy to see how Ariandel twisted himself into this self-serving position, using Freed as much as she is using him. All that said, the villagers prefer to lay blame on solely Freed. Perhaps this is, in part, because she is the outsider, but it is impossible to escape the narrative when you make yourself the face of the opposition. Those Corvians who adore the nun have become her knights, encased in armor from head to toe. Considering that Elfriede was once a fencer, these warriors seem to have received their training from her,
and yet
so their
Freed.
fighting style remains distinctly avian. The Corvian knights prefer to wield claws or rapiers modeled on feathers and talons, even spreading the rows of blades between their fingers like wings. And with that swordplay, they execute their fellow crowman, or anyone who threatens the safety of the painting. Where did she procure the undead bones to create the bonfire, or the Corvian talons to fashion Ariandel a flail? From the very start, the nun resorted to violent oppression to keep the flame away, and her knights were proof positive to who was the mastermind. Obviously, the nun had been plotting her tyranny for some time if she was training troops
51
and
out of
equipping them
120.
appropriately. Most
Gosh.
likely, she had discreetly recruited knights from among the most recent members of the community.
Unfortunately, I don't
Not
have
everyone was so
the
close
map
to the nun.
here.
The painter and Gale immediately recognized the scent of ash on us, while the one villager willing to converse
Let's
doesn't
see.
notice and can thereby be fooled by our denials. This makes sense if the former
So this
spent
one
a lot
puts
of
us
time
up
around
to
Freed at the
51
chapel while the
over
rest of the settlement did
180.
not. The only
That
villagers
seems to
receivers
give us
to
a
any
fat-
significant degree would be regular mourners or new migrants.
me see
These
if
new
I can-
arrivals would also explain how the Corvian Knights aren't severely affected by the rot
Oh,
of the
no,
others.
this is a
They haven't
fast
subsisted in
roll,
the painting
okay.
long enough to show signs of corruption, similar to the Corvian storytellers. All in all,
So we're not
Freed
there
must have
yet.
relied on people with less of a history within the painting for her secret police. The Knight's background
All right,
certainly explains why any true
gotcha.
Corvian would abandon Velka's prophecy. After all, they were people who
So-
didn't personally know Priscilla. These men only became crows as part of assimilating into a community of Velka followers. For them, the goddess of sin and her crossbreed daughter were stories and legends, not tangible persons. The one giving substance to the legends was
Damn.
Freed, embodying that image which first drew them into the painting. Without memory of the actual crossbreed, it isn't surprising to see Elfriede wholly replace her in their hearts. She was the master of the
That's
painting in
6.
front of them, her love material. Why should they side with some long-dead goddess? She was the one they
Alright.
truly adored, and if protecting this rotting world was her decision, then they would do everything to support it. even
Honestly,
betray their
if
gods
it's
and kin.
only-
The Knight's motives aside,
if
these developments were
removing
evidently
6
not
is
a
enough to give me
knee-jerk
that
reaction to the
fast
community's
roll,
sudden call for fire. Elfriede
I'll be
must have either
honest,
foreseen the coming
I don't think
consensus
we're
or
that
placated
far
the masses
off.
long enough to delay their action. Whatever time the woman was afforded, she made use of it to coax Father Ariandel to her cause, build an
I
army
think-
of loyalists, and swiftly impose
I
a
think we
crackdown.
can
Houses' windows
legitimately-
have been boarded up, and knights appear to enforce a strict curfew.
I think
While
we
based
can
in the village
legitimately
church,
get myself
Freed's
fast
warriors
rolling
hang
in
from
this
towers,
armor
bridges,
if we
and
just
masters all
keep
throughout
on
town, always listening for dissent
leveling
before
up
leaping into action. Predictably, worship of Velka was
vitality,
banned.
or no,
Larger statues were
endurance.
defaced while smaller idols were outright removed, even from worshippers' homes. We can spy the one
I mean, my
Corvian still giving
vitality's
praise
already
to
in
an
a good
empty home-style
spot.
altar. And when
Strength and
villagers do
dex
attempt to
are
protest,
also in a pretty
they're killed
good
off at
spot.
ranging, silencing the rest. Under this new regime, no one may leave or interfere with Freed's judgment. She is to be their new goddess of sin. Such autocracy is the reason Ariandel accepts the people's wrath in the form of his rose whip.
Yeah, he's
The
sleeping.
irony that black roses symbolized eternal love and commitment in Japanese flower language, for Ariandel so loved the painting world, he gave up his only people
All right,
and
let's
even his
go.
blood so that it might find salvation. And as they claw at his back, he persists with his madness to keep their dying world alive just a bit longer. In so many ways, the painting's continuation has been paid for in blood, so Father Ariandel can't let it go to waste. With Freed's encouragement, every additional sin is considered another excuse to soldier on, through the physical and emotional anguish. But making himself the victim doesn't change the futility of their situation. New blood will only exacerbate the rot over time, and this world will eventually become uninhabitable. The stagnation only guarantees a more tragic end for everyone, but neither Freed nor Ariandel care. They cling to illusions of the past, and it will take more ash before they realize flame. Breakdown. It was during all this that Gale left the lady. He served to find the second ash and procure the appropriate pigment. Based on the painter's dialogue, he explained his intentions beforehand, and the girl in turn
Right.
promised that she would paint the picture upon bearing witness to flame and receiving the material.
Alright.
Sometime after he left, Wilhelm took her to the village library and locked her in the attic where she remains until we reopen it. The logic is sound. If she cannot be killed, then imprisoning her is the next best option. Now that her servant
There we
and
go.
bodyguard is absent, Wilhelm could easily hide the painter
Wish that I
away
had
in
the
the
priest
parish
could be
secured
elaborate
by
on. There's
Corvian
a
knights. The girl could have climbed down to the side of the building using
cornucopia
convenient
narrative
makeshift
potentially you
platforms
can do
accessible
with the
from the
idea
balcony
of
like we
magical
do.
object that
But
allows
the
you to
Boise
perceive the
crossbreed is
unseen.
either not curious or
I
aware
mean,
that it is more dangerous than
this is
simply
more of a
awaiting Gale's
DS2
ash to rescue
problem
her.
in
Once freed,
general that
she
there's a
does
lot of
eventually
potential
return
there
on
that
her
doesn't
own.
get properly
Dora Talia
elaborated
back
on
at the
because it's
chapel and
so
patiently await the
slapdash
flame
how
and
they
pigment she
they
needs
put the
before she
lore
can start
together for
painting.
that.
Apparently, the medium for her masterpiece
so it
was to
definitely
be the dark
feels a
soul
little
of May.
bit less,
Whether this was her mother's idea or the girl's independent
clean
decision, the choice of paint
compared to
is
Dark
logical.
Souls 1 and to
Ariamis
some
was
extent
based on
3.
fire, which was doomed to one day fade. The dark, by contrast, is eternal, making for an immortal world. On top of that, the dark is by
Alright,
its
over
nature
there is
cold,
our-
complementing the kind of world the inhabitants are familiar with. And unlike blood of a Corvian that is only partially mixed with a dark soul, a pure dark soul should never rot even if it stagnates. The only question is the strength of the power to create a sustainable dimension,
Okay.
which is presumably why Gale specifically seeks out the souls of pygmy lords. Regardless, the land of kindness the undesirables seek for belonging should ideally be a world painted in the abyss colors. But before that, she wants to see the flame which created the old world, to know what she will be missing and why it must remain missing.
Oh, damn.
During that
Too
long
early.
wait, the rest of the village suffered. Between the rot infesting the very walls and the knights constraining their every move, countless
Oh,
bodies
man,
were
I keep
dropped
thinking
dead
they're
in the
doing the
streets,
roar
some
thing.
falling into the drainage canal
But no, they're
or within
doing
their
a-
homes. Many of them proved to still be alive,
They're doing the
even if
club.
reduced to crawling on the ground. But the fact that they even lie alongside actual cadavers speaks to the village's dire predicament. Yet despite Freed's attempts to quell dissent, the peoples will remain unchanged. If anything, as the rot slowly worsened,
There.
their resolve has only strengthened. Exemplifying the village's fortitude, one corpse in the corner of his home clutching, protecting an
There we
ember
go.
item. Another
Boys,
corpse carries the same
baby.
humanity lit a flame in the communal mess hall, with our one friendly villager seating himself fittingly next to the unlit ovens. No matter how much
God,
Freed
I
may wish
forgot
to
how
break them,
broken
they will
poise
not give
could
up on
be.
seeing flame. Instead, her Corvian knights have only managed to escalate tensions. When we first arrived to town, a procession marches from their homes to the parish gates, united against their oppressors. Such a loose uprising is still weak, a single knight causing the whole lot to panic and scatter with little effort. But not every clash with authorities has been so lopsided. We can find the corpse of, implicitly, a knight with his crow talons atop the mess hall surrounded by Corvian sorcerers, who have seemingly taken to the rooftops to resist. Another corpse smiles while clutching his crow quills close to the chest on an island in the drainage outfall, similarly encircled by the minefield of bodies piling up outside town. With the knights, we encounter total numbering less than a dozen. Losing any is a huge blow to their total force, and already some have clearly been overwhelmed by the rabble-rousers. Holed up in the parish, one can argue that the knights stepping in to break up the protest is actually proof that they are on the defensive. To some extent, Freed's regime is under siege. We can find the corpse of a warrior leaning against the church chimney, the poor soul seeming to exhaust all strength to infiltrate the parish from the high ground like we do. This weary warrior isn't the only infiltrator, as we do find a group of Corvian civilians who seem to have made their way in through the waterways, one still climbing out of the well while the other two, leaning against the wall or laying on the ground, act similarly exhausted. It has taken great pains, but the settlement is beginning to turn the tide against the knights, who likewise have begun to buckle from within. Inside the church building, we find the corpse of a heartbroken knight clings to the rafters. Perhaps realizing that Freed would never return his adoration, this knight wavered in his duties and was likely killed by his fellows there. Only the strongest and most dedicated are fit to serve, and the remaining knights won't allow any loss of heart when the going gets tough. Both sides are becoming deeper entrenched and are fast approaching a breaking point. The settlement hangs on to whatever strand of hope they can sow as to never lose sight of their goal. But as we can see in the one villager's excitement, their only hope is that the second ash will finally arrive and fulfill the prophecy.
Toxic.
Even after we free the painter and put an end to Freed, the conflict with the Corvian knights continues.
Right.
Neither side wishes to get up yet, at least while the fire we unleash is still only burning the chapel. Our one friendly villager, however, is happy to gaze up at our handiwork. However events play out, change is coming to the painting. After confirming fire with her own eyes and receiving her humanity paint, the painter rewards the person who provided her both these things, naming the painting after us or simply Ash.
One of the nice things about Toxic, once you get it, you don't have to worry about it.
Foundation for a new
Just
world.
heal through it.
Meanwhile, the world outside carries on with its madness.
Alright, so a few things there. Overall, fine. I feel like, for example, that section where it was like, to some extent, you know, Frida's thing, I feel like that could be cleaned up, made a little bit better. But I don't hate it. I will say that. I don't hate what I wrote. So that's a lot better than how I was feeling when on the first draft, so. And there's some of these transitory transition paragraphs ended up coming out pretty okay, so I can live with this. Woo! Of course you. Who allowed you? Okay, that's it. Get closer, asshole. Oh boy. There's our poor firekeeper. Our poor firekeeper. So close. All right. Up here. Reminder, we went on this giant adventure all because I got myself invested by a parasite by not looking on screen for a few seconds. The crazy things this game will make you do. Ooh. God, I thought I was gonna like walk right in between them for a second there. Scary. Oh, there we go. You gotta love the lily pads always survive the poison. Somehow the lily pads will always be a-okay. I don't think that's true in real life. I don't think I've ever seen like toxic waste marsh areas where lily pads are still alive. I feel like that I've never seen. Yeah, again, that's just sort of the reality of Dark Souls 2. Dark Souls 2 being made in the circumstances it was. It just was inevitable that they were... Like, again, I understand why the DS2 devs made the decision that they did. They're like, listen, Dark Souls is Miyazaki's baby. He's moved on to Bloodborne. It's not our place to try to tell, you know, try to tell the story for his characters and all that. Like, we wouldn't want to mess with that. So we're going to try to basically justify a soft reboot of this franchise. So that way we can do what we want to do or whatever we come up with without, you know, messing around with Miyazaki's thing. And Miyazaki will just be here on the edges to make sure that we're, you know, still on target, right? We're not screwing up anything with his baby still, despite all these precautions we're taking with the setting, right? So I understand the way that they're doing it. And I understand that as development continues stuff, the way that they want to, like, you know, be able to reference or call back with fan service to the older games while being able to build upon in their own new setting. I truly understand all that. That said, I still would have preferred if we just had like a you know, a more direct sequel like DS3. Again, I would be happy if we just got spin-offs and stuff. Like, forget the Elden Ring movie, give me a Dark Souls movie. And here, let me also clarify. If an Elden Ring movie allows the creation of more films in FromSoft's catalog, like Demon's Souls, Dark Souls, Bloodborne, etc., I'm totally okay with that. I'm just trying to say that, like, I do not care for a Bloodborne film as much as I would care for a Dark Souls film. You can also, I would also be 10 times more critical of whatever Dark Souls film will be coming out. They somehow screw up the Elden Ring film, it's like, oh well, that's a shame. They screw up Dark Souls, I'm just like, I hate you all. Curses to your mothers, your fathers, your grandfathers, your grandchildren, your children's children, and your children's children. That I shall not be forgiving. Alright. To make my life easier. Oh my god, there's so much crap. Alright. So now there should be no... Yeah, okay, cool. Alright, all's good. You guys are praying to good old Ceaseless? Or to the witch that he's watching over? Cool. Me too. Also, how much does actually... Okay, we can actually one-shot him still. Well, that's embarrassing. Like, seriously, do you have to spit the blood you suck right back at me? Poor Ceaseless, listen. You know, it's like old Yeller, chat. Sometimes you just gotta put him down. It's for the best, chat. We're not the bad guys here. Listen, we're giving the demon more than he deserves. Also, wait. Can I see it? Where is it? Where are you? Where are you? Ah, there he is! Oh wait, you guys can't see it. There we go, now you can. There's our centipede! There we go. Also, probably would be fair if I close this down for you guys. Like, you don't need to have your screen blocked out like that. All right. Boss fight? What boss fight? amateurishly stacked these things are. It's so cute. It's so cute. He went to all the trouble. It's so cute. He went to all that trouble. Just put them together like that. Oh, good old Ceaseless. You're a good brother, you know that? You know? Oh, he's pissed. Oh my god, the damage! You learn something new every day. Taking out his arm does lots of damage. Alright, you ready, chat? Oh boy. Uh-oh. Woo! Let no one say that chaos isn't powerful. Woo! Yeah, you just noticed, huh, buddy? Man. You're wondering how you got it caught in this situation, huh, buddy? Oh yeah, the chaos effects are also so much worse in the remaster and stuff. I'll be honest, they never did chaos right after the original. Like, just the whole runic text look. It's just so iconic. Gosh. Oh. And then he falls. I think it's just beyond the Centipede Demon's room, or maybe it's in the Centipede Demon's boss room. I forget. It's been so long. It's been so long. Alright, so now the lava that would spill from him is allowed to slowly dry up because he's dead and no longer spilling anymore. Oh! I didn't have this! No! I lost. I'm missing out on souls! I feel robbed. I feel robbed. What is this, chat? There we go. Man, remember when we had mounts that would let us get across these long distances on foot within a reasonable amount of time? You know what? I would not be surprised if a remake happens and they release like a chaos item or something. Like it's some random item you pick up here after you kill boss or whatever, and it's like increases your movement speed by like 10%. But like you know, obviously disappears on death or when hit by an enemy or something. So you can't like very easily abuse it, but like be able to be like zoom, you know? So you can get around this giant ass area faster. The body of the lady is here. as always. Usually they at least try to obscure the chest thing, especially when it's for a character who's not supposed to be undead. Boop, 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 boop. Boop, 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 boop. Let's go this way. I still have to get to what, like 240 or something K. So like we're a long ways away from actually getting a level up in, unfortunately. We're a long ways out. Again, I think it's so cool. So cool. They make it possible to see Centipede Demon early. Now for the fun part. Boop a boop 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 a doo boop a doo boop a doo boop a doo. All right. Do I even bother? I'm not sure if it's even worth it. Yeah, I'm not sure if it's even worth it, to go over there right now. Oh. Oh, God. Alright. Oh, this is gonna hurt. What'd I say? There we go. I like how they do the boss disappearance thing with him with the effect, even though this is obviously a non-boss version. Just kind of funny how it really is just kind of copy-pasting. And we can't go down to Centipede quite yet, unfortunately. That's fine. There we go. Oh. Oh, right. Oh, God. Thank you. God, I forgot about those boys. Do do do. Oh. Soul of a proud knight. Uh-huh. Black Knight, better be careful. Better be careful. Oh. There we go. You know, considering how this is technically late game, it's actually impressive how much they let you explore. Oh! It's okay. They can't hit me on stairs, apparently. Woo. I love the fact... I love when the enemies don't know how the hell they're supposed to deal with elevation. Got like Buddha guy here, dancing, brazing. Got the flame flowers above here. Oh. There we go. I'll worry about you later. More importantly. Oh. Hello. There we go. All right. Oh! Holy hell! I didn't see you there. Ah! Oh boy. Oh no. Oh no. Oh no. Also, one sec. The dog I think wants to get let out. So one moment. Okay, we're good. We good. Oh. I think I picked a good time to come back. Whew! Thank God I can four-shot these things. Oh, thank gosh. Again, they do the whole, you know, boss effect thing when they disappear. I find that funny. Oh. God, that damage, man. Really? Oh. Weapon broken! Oh. Which one? Wait, is it? I don't know which weapon ended up broken. Durability, where's that? Oh, there. Yeah, that one broke. 0 to 30. Still got there. You're getting up there. I should probably start looking into getting my stuff repaired anyway. All right. Oh. Oh. Woo! Woo! Ho, 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 ho. Really? That didn't work at all? Oh, we're gonna be here for a little while. Green Titanite. One thing I don't go too deeply into Abyssal Archive is why exactly we get green Titanite from the enemies we do. And I'll be honest, I still am not entirely sure what the factor is. Because we get it from like leeches, from like these enemies here. Oh! Fuck. 104,000! Well, this is not going to be, this is not gonna be, very nice. Not nice at all. Oh boy. Oh boy. It'll be fine, it'll be fine, it'll be fine. I just keep telling myself that. It'll eventually come true. We just have to survive all these enemies without falling to my death. It'll be fine. Oh, bit early. There we go. Whew. Get over here. Get over here, Taurus. Oh, okay. Okay, sure. There we go. Whatever. Good enough, I guess. All this for an ember I don't need, by the way. Why do I subject myself to this? Why do I subject myself to this? Well, there goes 100K. Lost and definitely will be forgotten. Well, I had my chance. I had my chance. All right. All right. There we go. Don't worry, guys. I just have to farm. I just have to farm these guys for another hour. Uh-oh. There we go. Just gotta farm these guys another 10 times. I'll make up for the lost souls. There we go. Thank God Black Knight weapons do so much damage. Thank all that is holy. Alright, let's get out of here. It's time to climb my way back to the top. Ah! Ah! Alright, you know what? I should just stay down in hell. That's a clear message. I deserve the fiery pits. Alright, I think we're gonna actually end here now. It's a good hour. I've done the check. I've been able to kind of like, you know, relive a little bit of my memory of this game. Probably gonna play some more sometime. But until then, I think now's a good time as any to call it quits. Woo. So let's get my souls and then be done here. Get over here. There we go. think we should have seen more of Ulasil and stuff. Listen, I feel like what we got with Ulasil is pretty great, and then the DLC went above and beyond there. So I'm pretty satisfied with what we got as far as like Ulasil and its secrets are concerned. Like, I think it would have been cool if maybe they would have mixed more of the ruins of the old cities and stuff with what we got. I think that would have been cool. Woo! Woo! Ah! Yeah. I just gotta give up here. It ain't happening. I'm just losing all of my souls. All right. All right, so sounds like Ariandel's gonna be done. I'm probably gonna have it done within the next day or two. We'll see. It's gonna depend on like what screenshots do I still want to add? Like, what do I have on hand that I can make use of? Like, how's all of this gonna work in the end? Gonna have to figure all that out. But as far as like the actual like reading content stuff is concerned, it looks like it's getting closer and closer to done. So I think giving it another like read through without the text to speech, see if there's anything that my eyes can find on my own. Obviously, you guys in the Discord can always drop a typo correction if you see anything that I haven't corrected yet in the latest draft. Be real cool to have some help there. Anyway,